Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes emotionless part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. He sat atop the head of his idol, Senju Tobirama, his head hooded and deep blue eyes shadowed as he stared out across the village for yet another night in a row. A lone golden lock could be seen billowing gently as a light breeze caressed his face. Slowly, he drew his hand up in front of his face to inspect the small item in the palm of his hand, and just as he brought it into the light, his crimson-speckled irises gazing intently at it, the small device came to life with the sound of labored breathing and a hint of urgent satisfaction in a distant voice that brought a smirk to the small, 7-year-old boy's face. Subject spotted atop the Hokage monument. All units in place. Squad 4 moving into position, subject unaware and surrounded. Awaiting orders, sir. Bring him in, lizard. This has gone on long enough. Hi, sir. All units. Repeat. All units. Move in. The young boy shifted up into a relaxed standing position and raised his head ever so slightly. I don't think so. It was a simple enough statement, whispered confidently into the night. Some might call it just a bit cocky that some 7-year-old brat thought he could go up against 24 of the village's elite shinobi, battle-hardened warriors trained in all manner of combat and deception, highly revered sworn protectors of the great Konohagakure no Sato, the strongest village in all the 5 nations, led by its Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. But as he stretched out on the grass in the blonde's mindscape, the Kyubi no Kitsune couldn't help but snicker softly to himself as he watched the small radio crumble out of his host's now unclenched fist. There was a damn good reason why it took 24 of the village's so-called elite shinobi to catch the little brat after all. If you aren't going to end their pitiful lives or at least provide some violent entertainment for me, I suggest you make a move, kid, he drawled out in the boy's mind, closing his large red eyes and nuzzling his head into his paw as he waited for the boy to decide his next move. Hee, don't worry, I've got this, Kurama. Naruto's voice echoed in his mindscape as he deftly rolled out the way of a desperately flung net. Though you're right, it's time I ended this. Gracefully, he performed 2 backflips in quick succession, creating some distance between himself and the approaching warriors, and landing in a crouch, he slowly brought his hand up into the ram's seal, causing the Umbu to pause momentarily and consider what his next move could be. It was usually rather unpleasant for those tasked to bring the child in. Just what is he planning now? A harsh female voice could be heard muttering in an annoyed, fatigued tone. As it were, she had fallen victim to not one, but 2 of Uzumaki Naruto's pranks that day, and although it stung her pride to admit it, she knew to be cautious when trying to detain the village's resident troublemaker. He was cunning, creative, and downright sadistic when it came to his pranks, and so it brought her no surprise that she found herself gripping her katana slightly tighter than usual. By now the boy's hand had moved into front position, and he could be heard crying out Bunshin and no Jutsu, prompting a few raised eyebrows from those gathered. As the smoke cleared, there was a collective sweat drop as a sickly, deformed version of Naruto could be seen flopped over on the ground, a strange blue pus oozing out of its eyes. Naruto, however, didn't seem to have noticed as he proceeded to fling his arms out with a huge grin plastered across his face as he yelled out at them. Let's see you bastards stop 2 of me. You lazy, useless, pathetic excuses for ninja. I'll show you. I'll show all of you. I, Uzumaki Naruto, along with my invincible clone, shall be unstopped. What the fuck? In all his excitement, the small, energetic boy had failed to notice the unimpressed looks on the gathered shinobi's faces and had at last turned to see the outcome of his latest attempt at making a clone. In his shock-filled stare, he was seemingly unprepared as a shadowed figure crept up behind him and quickly bound the boy in ninja wire, to the cheers and relieved sighs of the 23 other shinobi gathered. His angry insults could be heard across most of the northern sector of Konoha as he was dragged off towards the Hokage Tower by several rather peeved Umbu. As the rest of the shinobi present dispersed to continue their duties around the village, 2 figures were left standing on the monument minutes later, a heavy silence hanging in the air between them. The Umbu commander eventually turned to face the other man, arms crossed and with a glare that could not be seen but most certainly felt as he slowly began to speak. So dog, where exactly were you when the order was given 3.5 hours ago to bring the kid in? It was then that the man looked up from the small book he held in his hands, his spiky gray hair somehow defying the laws of gravity, as he turned to face his commander and drawled out a response. Ma, what's got you all worked up, Fox-sama? I was looking for Naruto, but then a blind old man called out for help as he had lost his guide dog, so, of course, as a shinobi of the leaf, I had to check every dog collar in Konoha until I found the right dog. The older man didn't even bother to sigh at the blatant disrespect dog was showing him. Tired and feeling a migraine coming on, he turned on his heel and began to march off back down to the village, pausing momentarily to whisper aloud, certain the younger of the two would hear him. This isn't what he would have expected from you, and I'm sure you are aware of that fact, Kakashi. With that, he left the gray-haired man alone up there, frozen in place, staring blankly after him. Glancing down, the young Anbu realized he was standing on the carved head of the village's beloved Yandame Hokage, Namikaze Minato, his sensei, his friend and surrogate father. Looking up into the distance, he saw the sun begin to rise, a warm, bright glow of yellow spreading out across the sky that only caused his heart to constrict ever so slightly. Forgive me, sensei, but Naruto is better off not having someone as broken as I am to raise him. The best I can do is watch over him from the shadows. The man sighed softly to himself as he looked down at where he stood once more, then performed a shunshin out of the area, not once noticing the pair of cold, crimson-speckled blue eyes that had studied him from the shadows of the mountain. Some time later, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked up from the mounds of paperwork on his desk to observe the small, blonde-haired child tied up in the middle of his office, surrounded by his finest Anbu, who were all stood at attention. He allowed a small smile to grace his weathered features. At ease. I see you have finally brought young Naruto-kun to me, though. I cannot help but wonder why it could possibly have taken so long? His voice remained calm, but the look he was giving his soldiers was enough to have them start spluttering incoherently at him when. That's because I am super cool, Jiji. And one day I'll be so super strong that they'll never be able to catch me, believe it? This brought a warm smile to the man hailed as the professor's face as he looked down at the excitable boy, who was somehow out of his ties, hands clenched into a fist and held up proudly in the air, grinning back up at the old Kage. He could only chuckle as he saw the distraught postures of his Anbu once they caught on that the troublesome child was no longer bound, but just before they could tackle the boy to the ground, he raised his hand for them to pause. That is quite all right, I would like to speak with young Naruto alone now. Dismissed. Naruto looked up with wide eyes as the Anbu suddenly vanished from the office and he started to look around for some sign of where they had gone. It was then that he felt the Sandame gazing warmly at him and turned to face the old man. So Gigi, what can I do for you tonight? He said brightly, glancing distractedly around the room, his eyes slowing down briefly to consider the proudly hung pictures of the previous Hokages before he brought them back to the Sandame. Well, Naruto, there is a rather important matter I would like to discuss with you actually. Would you like to explain to me why you felt the need to break into the Hyuga compound and dye every item of clothing kept there neon orange? The old man was rather impressed with the shocked expression which Naruto managed to pull despite the stern stare he was giving the boy. His ability to deceive would only improve with age. Oh wow! Someone really did that, Gigi? Whoever it was must be a crazy awesome ninja. Do you think you could get them to teach me? Do you? Who are these Hyuga anyway? And why don't they like orange? Wait, you don't really think it was me, do you, Gigi? Hiruzen suddenly found himself at the receiving end of the famed puppy eyes no jutsu that children seem to pick up at a particularly early age these days and couldn't help but cringe as he tore his gaze away from the huge, round, tear-lined blue orbs that were staring innocently and intently back at him from beneath those golden locks. He could only sigh as he tried not to make eye contact with the child again. Are you saying it was not you, Naruto? Really, he was getting too old for endless pranks were only turning the council against him even more and adding greatly to the already towered stacks of paperwork that the Sandame already had to deal with each day. Of course not, Gigi. How could I do something like that and not get caught? It's not as if anyone saw me breaking in and dyeing all the clothes an awesome orange, did they now, Gigi? The smirk on Naruto's face betrayed his claim of innocence, but at the end of the day the child was right. The Sandame could not prove that it was Naruto, and if the council weren't so frustratingly vocal about punishing the boy, he probably wouldn't have put his Anbu through the hell of catching him in the first place, not that it didn't make for good training. Besides, the Hyuga needed reminding that their supposedly all-seeing eyes weren't the greatest thing to grace the world since sliced bread. He only wished it didn't have to add to his workload. Very well, Naruto. I suppose without any real proof I cannot punish you, though I do ask that you go easy on the pranks for now. You've been at the academy for a year now and your reports have been disappointing to say the least. Perhaps you should invest more of your time in your studies rather than on wreaking havoc in my village. He watched on amusedly as Naruto bounded over to the door and called over his back, whatever you say, Gigi. See ya. Before disappearing down the halls, energetic as ever, shouting merrily on his way out despite the early hour in the morning. It had been a long day for the aged Hokage, and not for the first time in the past 7 years. He found himself wishing he had been the one to sacrifice himself to the Shinigami and save the village on that fateful night. My, how things might have turned out differently around here. He slowly turned back to his desk a few minutes later, absently noting that he had been staring at the photograph of the Yondaime Hokage and proceeded to pull open the bottom left drawer to retrieve his crystal ball. Focusing his mind and watching as the smoke cleared, a bitter smile crept onto his face as he saw the small figure of Naruto leaping into bed, not even bothering to change out of his dirty clothes. Returning the now clear ball to its place, he turned to face out over the village and whispered to himself, "Perhaps there is still hope for you yet, Namikaze Naruto." Yet, as he lightly fingered more tobacco into his pipe and leaned back in his chair, the professor's mind began to whirl. He considered all that had passed in his office during the last 10 minutes, a few key things standing out to him. Things that had him slightly worried, though he couldn't place his finger on why. First, there was Naruto somehow slipping out of his binds without himself, and several Umbu seeing how. Then there was that smirk that flickered across the boy's face as his eyes passed over the faces of the previous Hokages, and most disturbingly was the way in which Naruto's face would become suddenly emotionless when he thought the Sandaime wasn't looking at him. For the past few years, Naruto had become increasingly more difficult for the Umbu to capture, and it had reached a point where the Sandaime had to send out 3 more squads to bring the Namikaze heir in. It bothered the Sandaime to no end that regardless who he assigned to keep track of Naruto, the 7-year-old academy student was still able to vanish completely without a trace if he so wished. Often only turning up on their radar if he got hungry and went to the Ichiraku ramen stand, or if he decided to bother a particularly kind chunin by the name of Yumino Irika at the academy. The boy had grown inexplicably distant towards him even, he still exuded that same cheerfulness that never failed to bring a smile to the old man's face, but the sudden lack of desperation for love and praise didn't go unnoticed by the Sandaime. It was as if Naruto had grown independent of him. He no longer burst into the office at random times of day with the Umbu hot on his heels, and his pranks had become much less about drawing attention to himself and more about causing the villagers and shinobi trouble just for the sake of it. Something had gone horribly wrong. He trusted his instincts, and they told him he should keep a closer eye on the Yondaime's legacy. Turning once more to watch as a heavy rain spread out across the village, Sarutobi Hiruzen made a silent vow to himself to keep the boy away from that darkness that so painfully often claimed the minds of powerful young shinobi. If only he knew it was already too late. Leaning back in his chair, his bandaged face obscured by the shadows, Shimura Danzo allowed a rare smile to grace his face. He considered the boy knelt before him, face blank and emotionless, as he gazed up at the aged leader of the Umbu Root Division, patiently waiting to be addressed. Like a sharp blade waiting to be drawn. 3.5 hours, Naruto. I am impressed. Though do not think for a moment that you can start slacking off on your training. The next time you play hide and seek with the supposed village elite, you will evade their detection for at least 5 hours. Understood, Danzo-sama? The voice was soft but held a strong edge to it that rang out clearly in the large underground room. It was the voice of a disciplined and confident shinobi, and it contrasted greatly with the loud, whiny voice most had come to associate with one Uzumaki Naruto. This boy, who knelt before his commander, was sharp and obedient. He could command the attention of an entire room without raising his voice and could blend perfectly and silently into the shadows. Danzo was exceptionally proud of him. And what of Sarutobi? He asked his young protege. The hinged clone I attached to the Naruto clone just dispelled to let me know that the talk with the Hokage went well and that the Naruto clone has taken my place asleep at the apartment. Oh yes, the boy would be great one day. Very well. There is still much left for you to do. Go find Kyoko-sensei and have her train with you in your kenjutsu. Tomorrow I will give you another history lesson. Dismissed. Hi, Danzo-sama. As B blinked, Naruto had disappeared silently from the room. Son of Namikaze Minato, Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko, seal master in training and currently a high chunin level kohai in the root ranks. That Sarutobi might have thought it wise to leave the boy alone to rot, but Danzo would be damned if he allowed such a valuable weapon of Konoha to go unsharpened. No, this was just the beginning. Namikaze Naruto would become a feared shinobi like his father one day, and would go on to lead the great Konohagakure no Sato like the strong military village it should be. He would make sure of it. Strolling lightly through the dark, labyrinthine tunnels that made up the main root base, hands buried in his pockets, Naruto reflected on what he had seen and heard back at the Hokage monument earlier in the night. That dog-masked Umbu had apparently been his father's student and had, evidently, been somewhat close to the man if he knew of Naruto's heritage, yet Naruto had never heard of him before. This wouldn't usually bother the young ninja, but Danzo-sama had long ago made it his business to ensure Naruto's general knowledge was up to scratch. This included but was not limited to in-depth profiles on all a rank and above shinobi across the 5 nations, the ability to immediately recall both common and sensitive village mission reports and notable events spanning the past decade, and the identities, backgrounds and affiliations of all Umbu-level shinobi currently and recently serving in the forces. Heck, He could easily identify at least 90% of the undercover root shinobi in Konoha's general forces. Shadow clones make for great study partners. So why had he not been taught about this Kakashi character? The man was clearly someone of note. By the way in which he had addressed the Umbu commander, he had to have a fairly high-ranking position in Umbu, not to mention he was the student of the Kamidame Yondaime Hokage. He obviously knew of Naruto's true heritage, and it seemed the man was, at some point, on the Umbu guard the Sandaime had assigned to watch over him, though little did they all know they had been chasing a shadow clone around for the past 3 years. So why? Why wouldn't Danzo-sama, or even Kyoko-sensei, bother to mention this man to him? So caught up was he in his own thoughts that he was barely able to step out the way of a fire-enhanced kunai that was suddenly shot at him, lightly singing one of his bangs as it whizzed past and hit the far wall behind him. His battle instinct suddenly kicked in, and he quickly had to duck and roll forward as a shadowy figure leapt down off of the wall above him. Bringing his arms up to block a spinning kick, he was able to force his opponent back slightly, giving him enough time to slip a kunai out of his holster and enhance it with wind, preparing to swiftly deliver the weapon to his attacker's gut. But just as he was about to flick it forwards, the figure disappeared and reappeared beside him, holding his wrist tightly. "That's quite enough of that, I think, Naruto-chan." Naruto could only groan and drop his head as he recognized the familiar voice and turned to see his assailant remove their mask, giving him a cheeky grin and two-fingered wave. "What do you want now, Shursui?" The two had continued on together through the dim, deserted corridors for a while longer, and by the time they neared Naruto's destination he had developed a horrible, sick sensation in the pit of his stomach. It seemed tensions were continuing to rise between the Uchiha clan and the Konoha superiors. Naruto didn't fully understand the implications of the Uchiha demands for more control and influence being met by the Elder Council, but he understood perfectly the implications of their being denied, and Konoha wasn't ready for another war, especially not a civil war. The village was still recovering from the Kyuubi attack. "You know that was against my will, brat. Only 7 years ago, and was just about managing to retain its appearance of strength to the other nations. A civil war would present the perfect opportunity for an enemy village to launch an attack." Still, he didn't like the options that left them. They could wait for the clan to attack and make a military example of them by executing those at the head of the rise and further limiting the clan's power by discrediting them amongst the shinobi, restricting them within the borders and slowly shutting down the police force. This would ultimately put the Konoha superiors in a bad light due to the Uchiha popularity amongst the villagers, quite possibly cost many innocent lives in the crossfire, and could leave the other clan heads doubting their clan's perceived worth to the village. No, straight off the bat Naruto could tell that plan held too many risks for Konoha, which left option to annihilate the Uchiha clan and pin the blame on a third party. It was a crazy idea and many innocent people would die, but if either side would back down on the negotiations it would be disturbingly easy to pull off. After all, negotiations between the Hokage and a clan head were mostly private, so the other members of the Shinobi Council would know little to nothing about the current situation, and frankly, the only reason the superiors were aware they had to consider a counter-strike option was because they had Uchiha Shursui and Uchiha Itachi, secret root operatives, working as double agents for the village and trying to hold off a coup d'état until they could come up with a viable solution. They had a bit of time to work something out at least, but by the way Shursui was wording things it sounded like Danzo-sama had more to do with it than one who didn't know him might think. Danzo-sama valued bloodlines and anything that would add to Konoha's military might, so Naruto couldn't imagine why he would be trying to stir things with the Uchiha, but he had known the man long enough to know there was always a more cunning scheme at play and had learned early on to be wary of his commander. One of the first things the man had taught him was that a man's enemies are those he should endeavor first to make his friends, and Danzo-sama was easily his best friend. He respected the man, but he didn't trust him as far as he could throw him. Blinking, Naruto realized he had been silent for some time now and that they were standing outside the large, deep red door that was the entrance to his sensei's chambers. Looking up he found Shursui's eyes boring into him, as if considering something, but what? A few more seconds passed by until... "Naruto, if you were me, what would you do?" The hidden meaning was clear, particularly as Shursui's eyes suddenly spun wildly until they were the familiar black and red pattern of his Manjikyu Sharingan. Naruto gulped. He knew what he was supposed to say, but something was stopping him. At last he managed to breathe out, his mind made up. Damn the consequences if it ever came back round to him. "I would do what I felt was right," and meeting Shursui's gaze once more, he turned and slid open the door, disappearing behind it without looking back at his comrade. A slow smirk crept onto Uchiha Shursui's face as we watched his young friend disappear into the dark room. Turning to walk back down the corridor and running his hand through one of the flame torches on the wall, he paused and glanced back at the door once more, and in a barely audible whisper he said, "You still have much to learn, Namikaze Naruto. But I don't doubt you will be a great leader one day," and with that he vanished in a shunshin. He had some planning to do after all. Moving slowly into the large warm room, Naruto felt some of the tension from his talk with Shursui start to fade away. He couldn't help but smirk as he noticed his sensei didn't even bother to look up from her paperwork to greet him. She never did. At last he reached her desk, and after staring at her as she worked for a few moments, he took a step back and flopped sideways into the armchair opposite her, with his legs hanging over one side and head leant on the other arm so that he could look up at the intricate patterns on the ceiling of the room. Seals. Glancing around the room, he allowed his eyes to roam once more over the many bookcases she had, filled with sensitive information he just loved to sift through aimlessly on those rare days he had some downtime. Finally, he brought his eyes back to his sensei, who still had not looked at him. She was a woman in her late 30s and wore a simple short-sleeved black kimono that was slitted down each side and was tied with a light gold sash around the waist. Her build was slender but feminine, and her fair skin was complemented well by her soft violet eyes, but the feature that stood out most was her long, fiery, red hair that marked her as a woman of the Uzumaki clan. 4. Naruto had been shocked the day she had decided to tell him she too was an Uzumaki. It had been the day she had told him he would become a Fuinjutsu master under her tutelage, and 3 years down the line, and hundreds, maybe thousands of shadow clone training hours later, he was shaping up to be a fine practitioner of the art, even if he did say so himself. He had tried bonding with his sensei in that they were both Uzumaki, but she was having none of it. A condition of her teaching him Fuinjutsu was that he acted like a proud, mature shinobi of the leaf at all times and not some naive, impulsive, snot-nosed orphan, as she had put it. Pfft. As if that stopped you pestering the poor woman with your incessant questions. Shut up, Baka Kitsune. The fox only sniggered as he settled back down on his haunches, thoroughly enjoying the illusion of the great outdoors that Naruto had created for him in his mindscape. The kid even managed to recreate the smell of the grass. Admittedly, at first Naruto had been intent on getting answers from his newfound relative, but the most he had managed to get in 3 years was that she was sent to Konoha as a young shinobi to join the Root Division and act as a secret liaison between the two allied villages, and that after Yuzushiogakure no Sato's destruction she had stayed on en route as a Konoha kunoichi. The Sandaime not once being made aware of her presence in the village. She was powerful, easily S-ranked, but her power lay mostly in Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu, as the Uzumaki were famed for their prowess in those areas. As far as Naruto was concerned, if there was one thing she had to work on, it was her people skills. She was no typical root shinobi, and he had her to thank for him not becoming an emotionless drone in his training, but still, would it hurt her to be just a bit nicer to him? And open up some more? He knew it was not ever going to happen, she was too professional, but a boy could hope. Just because he was a shinobi now didn't mean he wasn't still a human. You're late, Naruto. He was suddenly jolted out of his thoughts for the second time that night as he was fixed with a glare that could probably freeze over a volcano. He quickly leapt out of the armchair and stood at attention in front of his sensei. Gulping, he decided it best to answer the redhead before she decided to start launching random items at him. Well, you see, sensei, Save it, Naruto, I'm disappointed in you and I'm sure you know why. You evaded Umbu capture for 3.5 hours tonight. I know you to be capable of better, and I can't help but think you allowed yourself to be caught knowing that you had outdone the last chase assigned to you from Danzo-sama by exactly 45 minutes. Care to explain yourself? Damn it, he had been caught out, the truth was. It got boring, alright. I could run rings around the Umbu all day, but I would much rather have them off my back so that I was free to do other things like information gathering and training. Can you blame me for not wanting to mess with them all bloody night? Besides, they have other duties to attend to that are crucial to village security. Really, I was just thinking of Konoha's best interests. He couldn't help but wince as he found himself on the receiving end of another of his sensei's glares. We shall have to make the most of the few hours we have left before Danzo-sama wants to give you another lecture. We can work on your swordsmanship in the dojo. I want to see how you have progressed since our last Kenjutsu lesson. Seeing the promise of pain in her eyes, Naruto felt a cold chill down his spine. This was going to suck big time. Perhaps I can help with that. Naruto spun round at hearing the familiar voice. Itachi and Ai-san, you're back from your latest mission. Another awesome ass whooping, no doubt. The faint smile on Itachi's face was enough confirmation. Ahem. Naruto paled, remembering his sensei was there, and realizing his slip-up. I mean, ahihi, greetings, Itachi Taishu. I take it your mission was a success? Thankfully, Itachi ignored Naruto in favor of speaking directly to his superior, Kyoko-senpai. I would like to volunteer for a spar with Naruto this evening. I too would like to see how far he has come since I left, if that is all right with you, ma'am? Kyoko, who was now standing and had, at some point, sealed away all the paperwork on her desk, simply nodded her approval at Itachi and made her way past Naruto to the door, causing Naruto to flinch momentarily as she brushed past, As Itachi slid the door open for her to pass through, he turned to look at Naruto one last time and give him a small smirk before following his senpai to the dojo. Naruto brushed a lone strand of hair out of his eye and breathed a heavy sigh. He was about to get kicked around for the next few hours and he had no delusions that he might stand a chance at beating the Uchiha prodigy. But not wanting his sensei to attack him for falling behind, he slid the door shut behind him, before activating the blood seal to lock it and hurrying off after the two sadists. He followed Itachi out to the center of the dojo and quickly scanned his surroundings before settling into his kenjutsu stance, the opening to the rebirth of the phoenix style that the Uzumaki clan was once famed for using. Resting his hand on the hilt of his sword, he allowed all his muscles to relax so that he might respond swiftly if Itachi made a sudden movement. He tried to keep his features dispassionate as the rather ominous three-tone mode Sharingan of his opponent spun into life, carefully regarding him, almost goading him to make the first move. They remained like that for what felt like a lifetime to the younger of the two, Itachi calm and confident in his perfect opening stance to the Uchiha clan's interceptor fist, and Naruto slowly getting impatient as he mentally urged Itachi to attack him. Who was he kidding? The stoic Uchiha could stand like that all night without batting an eyelid. He had to make the first move and he knew it. Taking a deep breath and steadying himself, he suddenly darted forward. Itachi immediately responded by drawing up his katana and, without pause, they blurred into action, swords meeting every other second in bursts of power before they would part, dancing around the dojo. Suddenly, Naruto found himself at the receiving end of a series of quick strikes and found he was having trouble parrying the attack. It was at that moment that Itachi decided to start playing mind games with him to rile him up. You lack confidence and resolve. Naruto tried to regain control of the battle by cutting through Itachi's momentum at a specific point in the onslaught, but he was easily forced back and immediately had to drop low and lift his sword to block a spinning strike. Raising himself, he managed to jab forward into his opponent's defenses and force Itachi to jerk to one side and ease off him long enough for him to regain his balance. You are an embarrassment to your clan. That cold voice was causing something to rile up inside him as he thrust forward and tried to pull a feint before launching his counterattack. He was easily blocked again. Is this all you are worth? Pathetic. He was having trouble keeping up with the swiftness of Itachi's movements. Was the Uchiha getting faster? Focusing on defending, he managed to bring his sword up in time to block each attack, but he could find no opening to take advantage of. You are weak. How can you call yourself a root shinobi? Naruto let out a small growl and pushed more power into his movements, preparing to launch another counter-strike using Itachi's superior height against him. Perhaps we should have left you to rot in the streets. The blonde launched himself into the air and brought his sword down on Itachi. But the older boy was ready for him. Forcing Naruto's sword to one side, he grabbed his ankle and flung him across the room. Are you sure the yondaime is your father? He taunted as Naruto slammed into the back wall. The sharp, shooting pain that now ran down his spine caused the young blonde to wince as he tried to brush it to the back of his mind. No wonder the Uzumaki were used as Jinchuriki. What else could they have been good for? That was enough. Naruto picked himself up off the ground and gripped his katana tighter, preparing to launch himself at his opponent. Itachi smirked. At last he saw that fire in the small boy that he was searching for. In Naruto's mindscape, the Kyuubi was having a fantastic time. That's it, kid. Tear that Uchiha brat to shreds. In all honesty, the Kyuubi actually didn't mind Itachi as, from what he had seen the past few years, the boy was nothing like his ancestors. Still, he would always take any opportunity to see an Uchiha get their ass handed to them. Naruto started to move on instinct, suddenly becoming a whirlwind of movement that had Itachi actually having to focus on defending. Yes, this is more like it. He is starting to unlock the potential of the rebirth of the phoenix. Moving on instinct, he is using each kata to its full potential. This match is looking up. Watching from the sidelines and thinking to herself, Kyoko-sensei noted that when Naruto got angry these days, he no longer got wild with his attacks like he had done when he was younger. Instead, the ancient fight style she had been beating into him was starting to emerge without him having to consciously focus on each movement. It was becoming second nature to him. It was a skill that took most shinobi a great many years to hone and would be particularly difficult for Naruto to master considering his connection to the Kyuubi. But instead of getting frantic with his movements, he was getting sharp and deadly. That he had not said a single word since the start of the match was a testament to his psychological development. But as Naruto suddenly drew his sword dangerously close to Itachi's neck, with enough power to behead the prodigal teen before being blocked and re-engaged in a whirlwind of action, Kyoko noted that he would still need much more training in controlling his emotions and honing his battle instincts. She would make a fearsome warrior of him yet. No control, nothing more than a mindless beast sweeping strike to the left shoulder. Blocked. Perhaps you should be sparring with my younger brother, you're more on his level. I think a spinning strike to the abdomen. Blocked. I can take you both for ice cream in the park after a somersault followed by a spinning kick. A feint. Heavy backswing to the head. Dodged. The fight went on like this for some time, with Itachi eventually letting up on the insults and giving practical advice to help Naruto adjust his posture and footwork, occasionally change his grip on his katana or reattempt to strike with more or less power depending on Itachi's criticism. Soon, what started out as a vicious spar became a much friendlier training session, like many the two had done together in the past, and some 3 hours later the young blonde was a sweaty, panting heap on the ground with Itachi standing over him, barely harmed, wearing an expression as if they had just taken a leisurely stroll down by the river or something. Just as Naruto was readying to pull himself back off the ground and attack once more, he heard an unexpected sound and paused, turning to the corner of the room where Kyoko-sensei had at last emerged from the shadows, an approving smile on her face, slowly clapping and strolling over to the two boys. "I think I have seen enough for now, you two. Thank you for your assistance, Itachi," she said in a soft tone, nodding lightly to the team, "though it is time you returned to the Uchiha compound. Umbu may go looking for you, and it will raise suspicion with your father if he believes you've been at the Umbu HQ all this time." Itachi, who had just pulled Naruto off the ground, nodded his head in assent. "Yes, ma'am," and turned to leave the room, but not before ruffling the blonde's hair and letting out a soft chuckle at the annoyed glare he received in return. "Good work, Naruto-kun, you continue to improve and surprise me in our spars. I look forward to seeing how you fare next time." Naruto followed his oldest friend's departure with his eyes and listened to the fading sound of his footsteps even after the door had slid shut. At last, he turned back to his sensei and managed to give her a cheeky smile. "So I don't suppose I'm free to go take a nap now, sensei?" She too begun walking towards the door but said nothing till she reached it. Looking back, she tilted her head slightly and whispered conspiratorially, "You have a history lesson with Danzo-sama now, remember?" Naruto's face fell as he recalled what his commander had said to him the previous night. Shit. But he lifted his head as he heard his sensei's light chuckle. "However, I doubt he would notice if you were to send a shadow clone to the lesson in your place." And so, leaving a dumbfounded Naruto standing in the middle of the dojo, covered in blood and bruises, clothes torn and hair disheveled, Kyoko-sensei disappeared once more into the dark corridors of the underground hideout. He ran his fingers through his hair and smiled to himself, thinking back over the last 24 hours events. Just another day in the life of a root shinobi, I guess. Uchiha Sure, unlike most of his clan and most of the village, had always been rather fond of the village's resident troublemaker. Granted, he knew the young Namikaze's true personality and had never been at the receiving end of one of the mischievous blonde's pranks, but there was something about being around Naruto that never failed to bring a smile to the teen's face. Despite being a root shinobi, trained to not only accept but to embrace the harsh, unyielding reality of shinobi life, Naruto remained pure at heart. To Sure, he was like a small flame that would slowly grow stronger over time until he became a grand beacon of light, a symbol of hope for many. Of that Sure had no doubt. He remembered the day he first truly came to respect Namikaze Naruto like it was just yesterday. It had been a year ago to this exact day, actually. Flashback. They had been running for 3 days straight to get to a small village in the land of birds. To Shursei's left was the root operative codename, Takeo, and to his right was the root Kohai, Naruto, who was wearing a seal that had changed his hair from its sunny blonde to deep black. Danzo-sama had sent them out to deal with an incident involving some possessed villagers that were committing mass murder and spreading fear across the land of birds. Usually, such a thing would not be of any interest to the root commander, but it seemed one of Danzo's less than savory business partners had a base situated nearby and was threatening to make a lot of noise that would bring serious repercussions back to Konoha. That is, if Danzo didn't do something immediately. Sure didn't know just what business Danzo had gotten into with the shady man, and he wasn't about to as either. His mission instructions were clear and concise: deal with it. So they would deal with it. Failure was not an option. Glancing over at Naruto, Sure was pleased to see that he showed no signs of fear or uncertainty. The boy had only just started going on missions when he turned 6, and this would mark his 5th mission that year. He was improving at a rapid rate. It was when they reached the destination village that Naruto truly surprised the Uchiha, after speaking to a few petrified villagers. They were able to locate a cave that the possessed ones apparently returned to during the day, before returning in the night to attack villagers by climbing into homes and savagely tearing off limbs to eat and smear over their faces, or they would drag innocents back to their cave to perform strange rituals with and often possess. Naruto had not shown a single expression throughout the explanation given to them, and when they reached the cave he turned to Sure and said, "I would like to take the lead from here onwards, Sure Taishu." Sure had not been expecting that, but he nodded his head in assent. "Very well, Naruto Kohai, I will leave this to you." Naruto only nodded his head in return before drawing his sword and marching straight into the main entrance of the cave, Sure and Takeo in tow. What they saw would often haunt Sure dreams for some time later. Bloody limbs strewn across the floor of the cave and naked, dead women covered in strange painted patterns hanging from the ceilings by their ankles. Continuing on into the cave, they eventually found the room that held their answers, huddled in a large circle, humming strange tunes and sitting on the bodies of their victims. Their leader, an old woman with long, shaggy green hair and a hunched back, stood dominantly in their center. The possessed children, eyes completely black and mouths dripping with blood, turned to face the rude shinobi and broke out into grins. Shursui could feel the contents of his stomach begin to churn, and Takeo had gone a sickly shade of green. But Naruto? Naruto only blinked. With a flash, the boy vanished, and moments later the three shinobi were the only living things in the room. Without saying a word, Naruto sheathed his sword and made his way towards the exit, motioning for the other two to follow. Once outside, he ran his hands through his hair with a sigh and turned to face the entrance once more. You might want to take a few steps back. They took several. Fire style, cranium carver. A large firestorm suddenly burst from the boy's mouth and traveled throughout the cave, causing the entire structure to completely crumble apart. Nothing but ash was left in its wake. It was an impressive display to say the least, and Shursui let out a long whistle. The brat had a crazy amount of chakra to burn. No hesitation, Naruto, impressive. Naruto turned and walked off towards the village. Looking back and locking eyes with Shursui, he said, I don't think those innocent people would have wanted me to hesitate to free them. He didn't say another word the rest of the way down. It was at that moment that Shursui realized that Naruto didn't just do things because it was his duty as a shinobi. He was doing them because he felt it was his duty as a human. It was from then on that he started to pay closer attention to the Namikaze child, finally beginning to understand why Itachi was so fond of the boy. The rest of the mission had gone on without a hitch. Once they returned to the small village and reassured its inhabitants that the threat had been dealt with, they caught up to Danzo's associate, and Naruto passed on a message from the old warhawk. It was a kunai to the throat. Danzo didn't like liabilities, and the man would be easily replaceable. The Uchiha would never forget what Naruto had said to them as they left the man's base of operations. Do you think Danzo-sama will ever send us on a pleasant mission? Shursui had immediately burst into laughter and swept Naruto into a headlock. Even Takeo had to fight back a smile. Flashback end. It was that memory that brought the bright smile to Shursui's face as he slid open the door to the training room Naruto was currently using, though it quickly turned into a mischievous smirk when he saw just what kind of training his favorite blonde was engaging in. The room held a massive pool filled with boiling hot water, and right near the center of it Naruto was blindfolded, doing a handstand on a floating log, whilst holding a leaf to his forehead using chakra. This was just too good an opportunity for Shursui to let up, but just as he was about to slide a kunai out of his holster, Naruto spoke up, don't you fucking dare. Hee hee, you caught me. Okay, I won't. How long have you been doing that for exactly? 1 hour and 48 minutes without falling, in about 4 hours with several slip-ups. Kyoko-sensei instructed me to do it for 2 hours straight without falling in, or I won't be allowed to eat. So I repeat, don't you fucking dare. At this point, Shursui was doubled over laughing by the side of the pool. This was just too good an opportunity. Kami, he loved Kyoko-sensei and her training methods sometimes. Calming himself and standing up straight, Shursui took a step back. Shursui. The threat in Naruto's voice was clear, but this was going to be well worth whatever hell the blonde laid upon him at a later date. Shadow Shuriken technique. Naruto was furious. Luckily, he managed to do a backflip at the last second and bring his hands up into the clone seal, creating several copies of himself to use as stepping stones out of the pool. However, Shursui had anticipated this and threw a shuriken at the last stepping stone clone, causing the blonde to tumble straight into the boiling hot water. He quickly emerged, flailing and cursing before he was able to balance on the surface and climb out. The glare he shot the older boy could have halted an army. It was at that point that Kyoko-sensei made her presence known from the shadows of the room, her lips slightly curved. All right, I think you've suffered enough today, Naruto. Danzo-sama would like to see you in the main room now. Naruto finally broke off the demonic stare he was giving Shursui, which had actually caused a cold chill to run down the Uchiha's spine, and turned to his sensei, "Hi sensei," before vanishing from the room in a shunshin. Shursui suddenly had a bad feeling as he turned to face the Uzumaki woman, unsettled by the warm smile she was giving him. How about a quick spar on the water, Shursui-chan? Her eyes held a glint that promised pain. He gulped. What were the chances Danzo-sama would summon him to the main room as well? Naruto quickly made his way to his room to change before going to his commander, muttering obscenities and vows to bring down pain, suffering and embarrassment for a certain Uchiha under his breath as he went along. Itachi, who had been walking past Naruto at the time and had seen the flames in his eyes, opted not to engage his riled-up young friend in conversation, that is until he heard the blonde mutter "Damn Uchiha," and decided to confirm. Naruto? Not you! Naruto snapped back before continuing his tirade and storming off down another corridor. Well, that's a relief. Sometime later, Naruto knelt in front of Danzo, the picture of calm and serenity. Despite what many thought about the bandaged old man, he did have a sense of humor and had heard about Naruto's raging after his recent training session. Pausing for a moment to gauge just how calm the Namake's boy was, Danzo leant back in his chair and simply said, "Nice bath, Naruto?" It was all Naruto could do not to clench his fists, but he couldn't hold back from gritting his teeth. This guy does kill me sometimes with his one-liners. Lighten up, kid. You've gotta admit it was pretty darn funny. I've already added it to my collection of funny Naruto moments in here. In Naruto's mindscape, the Kyuubi was sitting in front of a large screen, his paw pressed on a specific button of the remote, bringing up the memory of Naruto tripping into the boiling water, arms flailing wildly. This will never get old. Shut up. Naruto thought into his mind. He had worked damn hard at that training exercise and only had 12 more minutes until he would have finished. He would not be ready to laugh about it anytime soon. You summoned for me, Danzo-sama? Naruto said in an even tone. Danzo smirked. Naruto would soon be ready to handle political meetings. Not just yet. But soon. Yes, I have a mission for you. You leave as soon as you have made arrangements to cover your presence in public. He handed him the mission file. Taking the small folder, Naruto allowed his eyes to skim over the details and closed it before handing it back to his master. Understood. Good. Dismissed. Danzo took a sip of his tea as he watched Naruto disappear from the room. Things had gotten a lot more interesting in the Root Division since they inducted Naruto, and Danzo was glad for it. Konoha was coming into a new age now, and some things had to change in order for the village to prevail. Naruto's rise to power would mark a great change for Konoha. No more of those soft, unrealistic ideals that the Sandaime had encouraged and let manifest in the minds of the shinobi forces. No, Naruto would be like Minato, a symbol of strength for the village and a leader with a bit of an edge to him. His time in Root allowing him to keep his mind open about the reality of the world they live in and make the decisions the previous Hokages perhaps would not have. Konoha would be untouchable. After creating 100 shadow clones and placing them in key places across Konoha wearing various henges, such as bricks, kitchen utensils and books, that would be able to quickly take the place of the main clone in case it was dispelled, Naruto started packing for a 5-day all-round trip. His mission was just an assassination of some crime lord that wasn't keeping to his end of a deal he had with Danzo-sama, so he wasn't expecting to be gone too long. As he placed the last item in his pack and sealed it away, he felt a presence enter his room. Turning, he saw a rather disheveled-looking Shursui standing in the doorway, covered in several first- and second-degree burns. "Kyoko-sensei?" he asked the older teen. He received a stiff nod in return. "Still mad at me, Naruto-chan?" He shot Shursui a sharp glare at the Chan but sighed a moment later. "No need to be. I'm going to get you back and I'm going to get you back good." I deserve nothing less. I would say I'm sorry, but I'm really not. I had a good laugh earlier, a well-needed one at that. Look, I don't want to hold you up, I just wanted to wish you good luck on your mission and to let you know that for the past year or so I really have considered you like a little brother. Why does this feel like goodbye? Naruto was staring intently at Shursui now, trying to read deeper into what he was saying. I dunno, maybe it is. Your mission might be a failure, as might mine so. What mission? Yep, Shursui was almost certainly planning to do something stupid. I've been thinking about what you said the other day, Naruto, about doing the right thing and you're right. So I'm going to do something that might be crazy but it might just be so crazy it works and I'm ready to risk that for what I believe in. So thank you? Naruto only groaned. You clearly haven't thought this apparent suicide mission through if you're preparing your goodbyes. Please Shursui, wait till I get back and maybe we can come up with something too. No, Naruto. This isn't your fight. You're running late for your own mission. Go. Don't worry about me. I'll be here when you get back. He suddenly felt Naruto pelt straight into him, grasping him in a warm, brotherly embrace. Ruffling the small blonde's hair, he pried the younger boy off of him and looked him in the eyes once more and whispered, "You've got a great future ahead of you, kid. And you've got an early grave ahead of you, idiot. See you in hell, Naruto." See you in hell, Shursui and I. Naruto turned and walked out of his room, leaving his friend to watch after him with a sad smile on his face. Shadow clone Naruto was bored out of his mind. His original had gone off on a mission 2 days ago, so he and the other clones had to be careful not to dispel too soon. The original had pumped a ton of chakra into creating him, and if he didn't take too many serious hits, he was estimated to last about 6 more days. The real question was, what could he do to pass the time? Usually, he would just wander aimlessly around the less populated parts of the village, or plan out some pranks for when the original returned, and if he got desperate he would attend the academy. But he had gotten bored planning pranks and quickly grown tired of the looks thrown his was in the village, and it was a Saturday. He suddenly felt himself desiring company. He didn't want to go near the Sandaime for fear of raising suspicion, and he wasn't about to taunt any shinobi into chasing him. Maybe he could just find someone to hang out with? Problem was, he didn't have any actual friends outside of Root. There were a few people he talked to every once in a while in the academy: Inuzuka Kiba, Aburame Shino, Naro Shikamaru, and Akimichi Choji. He supposed one of them would probably hang out with him, but which one should he seek out? He didn't think his brain could take all of them at once. He was used to being around Root shinobi, not 7-year-old academy students. Kiba would invariably want to fight, and might be able to smell that he wasn't the original once the scent on the clothes he had put on wore off. So no. Shino wouldn't make for great conversation, and his aunts might also eventually notice he wasn't the original. So no. Choji would be awkwardly shy, and that wouldn't pass any time. That left Shikamaru. The lazy kid was smart. Naruto could tell that was a risk, but it was unlikely he would realize Naruto was a shadow clone. That was a plus. Yeah, that plan could work. Lifting himself up off of the grass and making his way out of the meadow he had been sitting in, Naruto made his way to the Nara compound. Naro Shikaku was oddly surprised when he opened the door to the Nara clan house and looked down to see Uzumaki Naruto staring tentatively back up at him. He, of course, knew the boy to be the Kyubi Jinchuriki, and having been a friend of the Yondaime Hokage's, he had always known that the boy was the man's son. He and his clan, of course, held no ill will towards the boy, but neither had any of them ever made an effort to reach out to him, so he was not displeased to see the blonde-haired child, only confused. "Good afternoon, Uzumaki-san, how may I help you?" He watched as some of the fear in the boy's eyes started to fade and a glimmer of hope flickered across his small features. "I wanted to ask Shikamaru if he would teach me how to play a card game, or maybe come and hang out with me for a bit, Shikaku-san sama." Naruto was mentally grinning as he saw how the Nara had easily bought into his act and was applauding his own fantastic acting skills. Shikaku was slightly shocked to hear Naruto attempting to be polite. From what he had heard, the boy was loud and crude, though this only proved that people were not always as they seem. Tilting his head slightly, the Nara had considered the huge smile the boy was struggling to keep on his face, fear or rejection clearly building under the surface. "I'm afraid Shikamaru has gone out with Ino and Choji, Naruto. Perhaps you might be able to find them over at the playground?" He was unprepared for the dejected look on the boy's face as he heard him mutter playground under his breath. Was there some reason Naruto didn't want to go to the playground? Sighing, he realized that other parents often supervised their children at the playground and would almost certainly forbid them from playing with Naruto. It was undoubtedly an unpleasant place for the son of the Yondaime. In reality, Naruto just didn't want to be around loads of kids. "Or perhaps you could come in and I can teach you a game, that way you can challenge Shikamaru when you get back to the academy on Monday." The shocked look on Naruto's face was priceless. How was he going to keep the act up in front of the village's chief strategist? If you're sure, Shikaku-sama?" He managed to breathe out. "Shikaku is fine, Naruto, come on in." Gulping, he followed the Nara clan head into the house, his mind working fast, trying to think over what he should and should not say or do. This was going to be tough. It would be an incredible feat if he managed to last without raising suspicion. If not, well, his original would have to worry about that when he got back. And he wouldn't be too happy about it. Placing the severed head of his victim into the sack, Naruto had a sudden feeling that something wasn't quite right in Konoha. Perhaps he should stop messing about and get back then. Kurama was right. Slipping out the window and disappearing into the trees, Naruto ran back to Konoha at full tilt, being careful to make sure no one saw him. What news would await him back at the village? The dark, candlelit room was eerily silent as the two figures in its center each regarded one another. Eventually the older of the two, who was poised in a slightly raised chair with his cane leant against the side, turned his heavily bandaged face to the left, and nodded to a corner of the room that was seemingly devoid of life before bringing his stern gaze back to the shinobi knelt in front of him. Feeling the other presences leave the room, the younger man rose to his feet and stood with his arms loosely at his side, his blonde hair the only thing distinguishing him from the darkness of the room, as his dark armor held no reflection, and he wore a matte black mask of painted porcelain which was marked with swirling red symbols that identified him as a Kohai under the tutelage of the Phoenix-masked route Captain Uzumaki Kyoko. "Could you repeat that, sir?" Danzo paused for a few more moments before inclining his head slightly and speaking once more. "Uchiha Shursui has betrayed Root and ultimately, Konoha. He must be put down, and I am assigning you the task of assembling a team to track him and deal with the threat. This is an S-ranked mission of high sensitivity and must be dealt with post-haste." "Well, this is tense." Naruto drew his left hand up to his face and removed his mask, affixing it to his waist before brushing a bang that had fallen over his eyes out of the way. As he lifted his gaze once more to meet Danzo's, the aged man was startled to see the same sharp, icy and calculating narrowed stare that one Namikaze Minato had often given him many years before. Danzo could barely hold back a smirk as he saw the accusatory glare settle into resigned acceptance. The boy was right to suspect him of foul play, after all, and his ability to make the right deductions in such a short time would serve him well when he took over the mantle of Hokage. But would the prodigal child make the right decision now? Regardless of the circumstances, Uchiha Shursui had committed treason and Naruto knew it well. The old war hawk was pleased to see Naruto reach for his mask once more. "Mission accepted." Nodding in approval, the root commander decided not to waste any more time. "Good. You are Dismi." "Actually, that won't be necessary." Both males turned sharply towards the familiar voice. Either had felt the Uzumaki woman enter the room, and both were unsettled by the stone-cold expression she wore on her face as she slowly moved out of the shadows, her ruby-red locks swaying behind her. "Uchiha Shursui's body has been retrieved and destroyed according to Route Directive 28. He was also missing both eyes when his body washed up." She allowed her eyes to move slowly from one figure to the other, glancing momentarily at the small sack by her student's feet that no doubt contained the head of his mission target. "I see your mission was a success, Naruto. Go wash up and change into your usual attire, then be in my office upon my return. No excuses for lateness." Dismissed. Naruto was ready to protest, but seeing the authority in his sensei's eyes, he turned his back on Danzo and marched out of the room. Pausing at the exit to look back, he saw that Danzo had risen from his seat and was engaged in an intense staring match against Kyoko-sensei. He knew better than to eavesdrop though and slipped out of the room silently. Moving quickly through the corridors, his mind whirling with new information from both Danzo and his now dispelled shadow clones, Naruto absently noted that whenever he passed another operative they would not meet his gaze, and a few even picked up their pace. What was their problem with him now? "Actually, Kit, you are emitting an incredibly large amount of killing intent right now. You need to calm down. You knew that Uchiha brat would do something stupid while you were gone, and you as good as told him you approved." "I did not tell him to attack the root commander." "Firstly, watch your tone when you are talking to me, child. We might be on friendly terms, but I am still a being that far outclasses you. Do not forget it. Secondly, rein in that Ki. You don't want patrolling Umbu to pick up on that intent and zone in on this base location." The riled-up blonde growled before slamming open the door to his room and storming over to the bathroom. Reaching the sink, he splashed some water over his face and tried to slow down his breathing and draw in his killing intent. He felt the ruby-red necklace on his chest pulse for a couple seconds before seals spread out across his body, forcing back the demon chakra he was drawing on and soothing his own chakra. The stone in the necklace was called a Phoenix Gem, and it had been given to him by Kyoko-sensei when he first joined Root. She had told him it would allow her to always track his location and to send him subtle messages across long distances, but that it also held calming properties from an ancient and sacred entity. He had been instructed to keep it under his shirt and to only reveal that it helped him refuse the dark side of the Kyuubi's chakra, particularly if Danzo-sama was the one asking. She wore an identical one that was always visible dangling over her chest. A few moments passed by before he felt some semblance of calm flowing through him. Looking up at his reflection in the mirror, he watched as his eyes reverted back from narrow red slits to their usual sea of blue, with hints of carmine around the irises. In his rage, he had almost given into the darkness in his heart and morphed into tail beast mode, like his younger self had been prone to do in the early days of his root training. "You've come a long way since then, Kit. You are able to reject that power a lot quicker. I only wish I didn't let it creep up on me in the first place. I've acknowledged you as a worthy container for my greatness, so you had better not disappoint me. These things take time." "Thanks, Kurama. I'm feeling a lot more relaxed now. I just need time to think." "Well, I can't have you embarrassing me when we cross paths with my younger siblings and their Jinchuriki. So get it together." Silently thanking his demon companion for his reassuring words and returning to his room, Naruto removed his armor and flung on his usual black pants, black shirt with red Uzumaki swirl and sleeveless black hoodie combo. Glancing at the clock, he realized he probably didn't have much time before his sensei returned to her office and slipped on his black fingerless gloves and sandals before darting out the room. As he approached his sensei's office, he cast his mind back a few days ago to when he had walked down that very corridor with his brother of sorts, Shursui. Why had he said he would do what he felt was right? If he had been in Shursui's shoes, would he really have gone to those lengths? Did he believe in his own words now? Feeling his mind wandering astray, the boy shifted those thoughts from his mind. Of course he did. Danzo-sama was a disease. Naruto remembered how Shursui had hinted that the old warmonger was involved, and he had seen that guilty, pleased look in the old man's eye when he spoke of Shursui's actions. Just what was going on? Rubbing his temples, he settled into the chair opposite his sensei's unoccupied one and began to run his mind through all of the possibilities, sparing a sigh as he noted Kurama was taking little to no interest in the Uchiha situation. I'm sure you must have some ideas, O wise and powerful one, he called dramatically into his mindscape. Come on, help me out here. I know you don't like the Uchiha, but those two are my family, he pleaded as he stepped into his mindscape and sprawled out tiredly on the grass in front of the huge, nine-tailed demon fox. The fox, for his part, only breathed out a sigh before opening a single eye to meet the expectant gaze of his young Namikaze host. Not that I care in the slightest, but it seems this is about the Sharingan. You can't have missed that expression that flashed across Danzo's face when your sensei mentioned the body's lack of eyes? If I had to place a bet, I would say Danzo wants the Sharingan for Konoha, just not in the hands of the Uchiha. He doesn't trust them, rightly so I might add, and wants them and their abilities purely under the village's control. Naruto only nodded as he looked up at the morning sky in his mindscape. Power. It's always about power. Kurama remained silent but was impressed with how Naruto was handling his emotions. The boy had truly grown over the years. Also, this clearly has something to do with the revelation that I was being controlled by an Uchiha on that night. No doubt Danzo passed on suspicions that the Uchiha were responsible after you revealed to him the truth of the attack. Naturally, the Konoha leadership would have started to curb the clan's power, which has led to the current situation. It all goes back to that night, doesn't it? I must be cursed. If I hadn't been born, you would have remained inside my mother where no Uchiha could control you, and all of this would have been avoided. It's too late for anything to be changed now, Kit. The Uchiha are stuck in their corrupted mindset, and Danzo has no real opposition at the moment. A little runt like you certainly isn't going to stand in the way. Don't I know it? And he did. Naruto had spent a great deal of time around Danzo and was well aware that he was not nearly on the man's intellectual level yet. He needed more time than he currently had before he would be able to make a difference in the village. Besides, you have other issues to worry about at the moment. What are you talking about? The boy turned on his side to rest his head on his elbow and quirked an eyebrow at the immortal. What now? I was sifting through all your shadow clone memories while you were distracted, and it seems you visited the Nara compound yesterday and played shogi with the Nara clan head. The Kyuubi could only snigger as the blonde leapt up, his energy having returned, and yelled what? At the powerful creature. Reaching for the remote, the fox hit the play button and his face burst into a huge grin as he watched Naruto's face go from shock to annoyance to panic as he saw a video of himself playing the popular war game with the village's head strategist, and winning. Kami, help me, this day cannot get any worse. Bad things usually happen in threes and, as it were, you are no exception in this instance. You've also had Hatake Kakashi tailing you, and he now suspects you of being able to create shadow clones amongst other abilities. He has reported to the Sandaime, and your Umbu guard has doubled in size. One wrong step and they're ready to haul your sorry butt to interrogation. At this point, Naruto was banging his head against a rather large tree and muttering to himself, stupid shadow clones, they had one job. 1. Don't draw too much attention. Grr. Glancing up upon realizing the sniggering had stopped and seeing the Kyuubi with a sadistic smile on his face, not saying a word, Naruto was instantly on high alert and snapped himself out of his mindscape. Opening his eyes, he jumped back slightly as he found himself pinned with a piercing stare by two deep, violet orbs. Kyoko-sensei was now seated on her side of the desk, holding a small cup of tea and sifting through sheets of paperwork that had not been there when he had first entered the room. Naruto's eyes dropped to the ruby necklace hanging from her neck, momentarily remembering how he had almost lost his cool earlier, and he focused on remaining calm as he spoke up. Sensei, what happened while I was away? Lifting her head again to consider the small boy, Kyoko sighed softly before settling her teacup down on the large oak table and leaning back in her chair. Uchiha Shursui attacked Danzo-sama in an attempt to control the commander with his Sharingan. He was soundly defeated but managed to escape the base. Sometime later he was sighted with Uchiha Itachi before disappearing completely. Uchiha Itachi was questioned by the police force under suspicion of foul play and has been restricted to the Uchiha compound under the orders of the Uchiha clan head. No party was able to locate Uchiha Shursui until recently, and a suicide note was found by the Uchiha clan. Throughout the explanation, Naruto had remained silent, but his gaze had hardened as Kyoko-sensei came to a finish. Itachi has been detained in the compound? Yes. I need some air. He rose from his seat and bowed to his sensei before turning and leaving the room. Sipping her tea and turning her attention back to her paperwork, Kyoko pondered just how these events would impact her student. All in due time, I suppose, she whispered, fingering the stone nestled against her chest. It was about 8 a.m. and the village was slowly waking up as shinobi rushed in various directions. Villagers started to open up their shops and students made their way to school. Naruto was strolling lightly down a busy main street, hands in his trousers as he stared ahead of him, ignoring the customary glares he received. He could feel the locations of each shinobi on his guard as they followed his every movement carefully, but he didn't have time to worry about that at the moment. Besides, he wasn't an imposter and had been trained to withstand torture and interrogation. They wouldn't be able to prove anything, and the Sandaime would have to dismiss it as a false alarm and send that meddling Hatake for an eye test. Before he realized what he was doing, he found himself standing outside the academy. Naruto had never actually been to the academy in person, always choosing to send a shadow clone so that he could focus on doing some proper training in one of the designated route training grounds. Shrugging to himself, he decided he might as well hang around for a bit and try the academy out firsthand. He doubted he would learn anything he didn't already know, but it would be useful to study his classmates a bit and see who might be helpful to him in the future. As he entered the classroom, he raised an eyebrow at the shocked expressions everyone in the room was giving him. What? He muttered, annoyed at having so much attention focused on him. Iruka's expression quickly changed to an approving smile. Oh, nothing, Naruto, you're just earlier than usual. Please take your seat. Whatever. He slowly made his way to the seat in the top corner of the room, ignoring the incredulous stares he was receiving. 20 minutes into the class and it was official, the academy was a complete and utter waste of time. The Namikaze heir had, by this point, stopped listening to the teacher and began studying his classmates. He was unimpressed, to say the least. The male population of the class were lazy, undisciplined, childish, and particularly in a certain Uchiha's case, drowning in their own arrogance. Every single time Uchiha Sasuke opened his mouth, he was met with cheers and whoops from most of the girls in the class. It was pathetic. This was not how Kunoichi behaved. Kami, if Kyoko-sensei ever saw this. Naruto's mind began to wander back to some of his early training sessions. Iruka, seeing the suddenly disturbed look on Naruto's face, voiced his concern. Is everything alright, Naruto? Huh. Yeah, I'm fine thanks, Iruka-sensei, Naruto muttered as he was shaken out of his reveries. Yes, Kyoko-sensei would almost certainly do something terrifying to those little girls if she were here. He was once again the subject of many shocked stares. The class had not been expecting such a calm response from the class loudmouth, but Naruto just returned their looks with an annoyed glare. And why did the Hyuga heiress keep staring at him? He was about ready to pin her with a glare and a bit of ki before he heard Kurama mutter disinterestedly from his mindscape. Idiot. What? I'm the idiot here. Are you not paying any attention to the people around me? Their ignorance does not make you any less of an idiot. Why are you even wasting valuable time here? That's a good point, actually. He waited until the next break before creating a shadow clone to take his place and slipping out of the academy, his guard completely unaware of the change. Blocking a series of kicks, Naruto was relieved to have his mind distracted. After leaving the academy, he had gone to train at one of the secret route grounds where he had found the operative codenamed Terra engaging in some harsh taijutsu training. Seeing the perfect opportunity to relieve some tension, he had challenged the stoic agent to a taijutsu match and was not disappointed. They had been at it for half an hour now, either one letting up on the other. Terra was strong and he always had a counter ready for Naruto's moves, not to mention his blows were anything but gentle. Naruto knew he was a Nara and was impressed with how the guy's mind worked at incredible speeds in the heat of battle. However, Naruto's body was faster than the Nara's mind and he was able to move into the defensive fairly easy. If they had not limited the match to taijutsu only, Naruto would have won ages ago with the help of the Hiraishin. When Naruto had first begun his Fuinjutsu training, he had not believed he would be able to recreate his father's prize technique, but after Kyoko-sensei revealed it was based on Uzumaki Fuinjutsu seals shown to the Yondaime by his wife, Naruto had studied day and knight with at least 50 clones until he could do it. At the moment he could only move across half the length of Konoha, had to rely on the tri-pronged kunais to perform it, and still hadn't fully integrated it into the rise of the Phoenix style, but he was rapidly improving. Dropping to the ground and delivering a sweeping kick towards his opponent that forced the older boy to leap back, Naruto saw that Terra had tried to catch him with his shadow. Root shinobi rarely played by the rules, he supposed. Grinning, he slipped one of his special kunai out of his holster, and timed the throw perfectly for when Terra shot towards him with a rock-encased fist. Time seemed to slow down as the kunai narrowly missed Terra's face, and the agent realized his error just a second too late before he was slammed down into the ground. Naruto knelt with a kunai to his throat a moment later. I concede. Hee wise move, my Nara friend. Terra only sighed as he looked up and saw the bright, victorious smile the young Namikaze was giving him. Namikaze-san, my name is Terra. I am not a Nara and Root operatives do not have friends. Whatever you say, Nara-san. Good match. Good match, Namikaze-san. Naruto helped the young Nara to his feet and they both turned as they heard footsteps enter the clearing. Unsurprisingly, it was Kyoko-sensei holding a large file of paperwork. That was quite the display, boys, I'm impressed. Neither boy spoke, but they both nodded their heads at their captain. Terra? She barked, causing the usually calm and collected boy to jump. Yes, ma'am? The Nara managed to stutter out. Take this file and deliver it to Danzo-sama immediately. Dismissed. Nodding, Terra took the file and vanished quickly from the clearing, leaving the two Uzumaki alone together. I take it you have not seen Itachi then, Naruto? The older of the two questioned. No, is there some reason why I should have, Kyoko-sensei? No, I suppose not. Though I have spoken with Itachi-chan today, and it seems this might be his last day in Konoha. For perhaps the first time since he had met the woman she had an expression other than annoyed, mischievous or unreadable. His sensei seemed melancholic. And just what is that supposed to mean? There was a lump building in his throat now. This could not be happening so soon. Could it? I mean, you should go clean up then pay your Nai-san a visit as today may well be your last chance. I've never been one for goodbyes, but perhaps he will part you with some greatly needed wisdom. By the time she had finished speaking and looked up, she saw the young boy had vanished in a yellow flash of light. Smiling softly to herself, she turned and walked back towards the root base whilst humming quietly. Back in front of his bathroom mirror once more, Naruto stared purposefully at his own reflection until he felt he saw the face he had been searching for. The face of Namikaze Minato staring back at him. Why? Why do they say that I am like you when I am helpless? Unable to do anything but stand by as things fall apart around me? Is this the face of a leader? A protector? I'm 7 years old, damn it. I shouldn't know as much as I do and I shouldn't have this much pressure on me. But meeting his own gaze once more, Naruto felt only one emotion. Shame. No, what am I saying? I am Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of the great Kyubi no Kitsune, not some pathetic child. I might not be ready to lead now, but one day I will rise from the shadows and restore honor to my village. I am not Minato. I am Naruto, and I will not fail. Grabbing his sword and heading out of the base, he finally felt in control. He was no longer someone else's pawn, and for perhaps the first time since becoming a shinobi, he truly wanted to become the Hokage. In his mindscape, the Kyubi no Kitsune was stood on all fours now, tails swishing behind him as he basked in the warm feeling of power and resolve that his host was exuding, feeling the strength of the boys while the fox was once again reminded of a man he had not laid eyes on for hundreds of years. The Sage of the Six Paths. Dropping down onto the windowsill, Naruto was unprepared to be met by a pair of black and red eyes he had never before seen on his brother's face. It was the Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi's patterned eyes bored deep into Naruto's sea blue. Just what are you doing? Outsiders were rarely allowed into clan grounds, and though Naruto had snuck in many times, he had never actually gone to the main clan house. Flinching at the harsh tone of voice, Naruto steeled himself and maintained his gaze. I could ask you the same thing. So you are just going to kill them? All of them? Tonight? He whispered, looking out at the moonlit village from his perch atop the Hokage monument. His dark-haired companion turned to face him, fully clad in his umbu gear. Yes, Naruto, tonight I will murder my entire clan. We are root shinobi and it is our duty to protect Konoha and her interests no matter the cost. It had taken some convincing and a few mild threats on Naruto's part to get Itachi to go to the monument with him, but in the end the Uchiha had relented. They had stayed up there for a couple hours whilst Itachi relayed to Naruto all that had passed with regards to his clan during the blonde's absence. It was a rather unsettling story that left Naruto itching to bang some heads together. There's just one thing, Naruto. At this the blonde turned to face the Uchiha, not sure what more there could possibly be. I can't bring myself to kill my little brother Sasuke. He's innocent in all of this and all the other kids in the clan aren't? Now Naruto was getting pissed. Please Naruto, he's my brother. All I am asking is that you look out for him, befriend him and keep him out of Danzo's slimy clutches. Naruto stared unblinkingly at the older boy for what seemed like a lifetime before turning back out to face the village. No. Naruto, please stop being childish and do this one thing for me. Absolutely not, your little brother is a complete prick. Do you have any idea how hard it is sparring with someone so full of themselves you have to refrain from snapping their necks just to teach them a lesson? Yes, Naruto, I sparred with you on many occasions when you were younger. The sharp glare Itachi received brought a much-needed smile to his face. Look Naruto, none of us are perfect on our own. We are born to attract others to us to make up for our flaws, and when we come together for a common cause it is only then that we start to walk the right path in life. You and I are Konoha Shinobi. I will always be Uchiha Itachi of the Leaf, and you will always be Namake's Naruto of the Leaf. We will always be comrades. No matter the distance between us. Sasuke will be your comrade too someday. Please show him the kindness that I have shown you. Why don't you save all that for your grand speech later after you murder all those Uchiha of the Leaf? Please, Naruto? Naruto was fuming. They weren't just going to take out those at the head of the rise, they were going to kill everyone. And Itachi was going to be the one to do it before going rogue and spying on some criminal organization for the village. That was one thing, but now he wanted Naruto to play counselor to that bastard Sasuke. Hell no. He would not do it. Looking out at his home, though, he couldn't help but feel as though he owed it to Itachi to do that one thing. Fine. I will try and befriend Sasuke, and failing that I will do everything in my power to at least keep him out of Danzo's clutches. Happy? That is all I ask. I must go now, the time is nearing, but I will leave you with one last piece of wisdom. It's never been the one who becomes Hokage will be acknowledged by everyone, instead it's the one who is acknowledged by everyone will become Hokage. Soon you will have to leave the comfort of the shadows and step out into the light. Good luck, little brother, your village needs you. Good luck, big brother, you are a true shinobi of the leaf. Rising to his feet, Naruto slowly walked over to Itachi and offered his hand, which Itachi grasped tightly. After staring at one another for a few moments, they each vanished from atop the head of Senju Hashirama, one in a flash of yellow light and the other in a flock of crows. Both certain that their paths would cross again in the future. His eyes snapped open, he was panting heavily and sweating profusely. A nightmare. It didn't help his breathing that he was in a dark, underground, windowless box room either. Sitting up, he rubbed his eyes and his heart nearly stopped altogether. Standing at the end of his bed with her arms folded and face frowning, Kyoko-sensei was fixing him with a hard stare. The red stone around her neck throbbing lightly and emitting a deep glow, his own necklace matching its behavior. I sense distress. She answered monotonously to the silent question before turning on her heel and marching out of his room. She didn't even bother to ask if he was all right. Crazy bitch, he mumbled to himself before flopping back down and turning on his side. There was no way he would be able to get back to sleep now, not when he had just experienced a vivid dream of what was going down at the Uchiha compound, perhaps at that very moment. When the sun rose in the morning, there would be hushed whispers across the village, there would be panic and confusion, and in some cases, relief. Most significantly, however, there would be lies, as Uchiha Itachi's name would go down in Konoha's history books for all the wrong reasons, and it sickened Naruto to the stomach. Still, life would go on, it would have to anyway. Heaving himself out of bed, he quickly got dressed and headed out into the main base. Might as well get some training in while I'm up. Root Shinobi never slacked off after all. The Root operative codenamed Takeo had been on his way back to his room to study after sparring with the agent codenamed Asilia when he heard a pained grunt from one of the private training rooms to the left. He was instantly curious, but it was a strict Root rule that an agent was not permitted to enter a private room without a level of clearance that currently only 3 people had: Danzo-sama, Kyoko Taishu, and Naruto. Despite his urge to slide open the door, he continued to walk on, that is until he heard another outburst. Motherfucker! Takeo froze. He knew that voice, it was Naruto. Perhaps if he knocked, the enigmatic blonde would permit him to observe his training. Although the Root Shinobi did not talk amongst each other often, it was common knowledge that Uzumaki Kyoko was ruthless when it came to her training methods, and only her students were subjected to the regime. Some of the others had been lucky enough to be sent to her with messages when she was in the middle of training someone and had been able to see what the big deal was, which always led to excited whispers throughout the base. Takeo had not yet been so lucky, and for many years he had wanted to see just how the highly trained nin that she oversaw were worked. Takeo was dying to see some of her training methods firsthand, so, uncharacteristically, he drew up the courage to knock on the door. Time seemed to slow down as he waited for a response, a bead of sweat rolling down the side of his face as he stood nervously outside. Enter. Takeo breathed out a sigh and slid open the door. Oh hey Takeo, I wasn't expecting it to be you. What can I do for you? And why do you look so shaken up? Takeo's eyes were wide as he saw what the Namikaze heir was doing. Naruto was hanging with his bare hands from what appeared to be a large, searing hot metal pole suspended from the ceiling by 2 chains. What was more shocking was that every few seconds various objects would shoot at the blonde from a random direction, and Naruto would have to either swing the whole pole out of the way or swing himself on top of it to dodge, otherwise risk falling onto one of the many spikes that covered the ground below. Looking around closely, Takeo noticed that there were seals painted all around the room that would glow slightly before something sharp or heavy would shoot out towards the small boy. Takeo was mesmerized watching the blonde swing expertly out of the way each time, seemingly unaffected by the heat of the pole on his bare hands. Takeo could feel it from where he stood by the entrance. Takeo? Oh, I apologize, Naruto-san. I heard a pain noise coming from here and thought I might check that the person was alright. He lied badly, so caught up in the performance in front of him. Naruto quickly swung onto the pole and had to duck a volley of shuriken that shot out from behind him. Sensing he had a couple hisekans, he turned to his comrade and quirked an eyebrow at the shifty-looking agent. And now the truth? Takeo? Forgive me, Naruto-san. I wanted to see one of Kyoko Taishu's training exercises for myself. He bowed his head to avoid meeting the blonde's penetrating gaze. Expecting to be kicked out, he was startled to hear Naruto chuckling softly and refocusing his attention back on his training. That's alright, Takeo. I don't mind company. I used to do this exercise with Shursui and Itachi. It's a lot harder with more than one person up here. Believe me. Would you like to join me? The look on the agent's face was priceless, and even the Kyuubi choked up laughing. Poor fool, looks like he's been given his first treat. I see why you enjoy toying with Danzo's agents. Ma, I'm not toying with them, I just think they all need a bit of relief from the pressures of being an emotionless drone every once in a while. They have to interact with regular people sometimes, and it's creepy how much they lack social competence. He needs this. Well, are you coming up here or not? Naruto shot the shinobi an expectant look and continued swinging out the way of the many projectiles. Won't Kyoko Taishu disapprove? Takeo was uncertain. Was he allowed to train with Naruto? Danzo-sama had not made it a rule that he couldn't. Ha! Of course not, she loves watching people suffer. Come on up. How do I get up there? Jump, stupid. Takeo shook his head, of course. He was just so shocked he wasn't thinking straight. Feeling the excitement welling up inside him, he braced himself and launched off the ground at the pole. Kid doesn't know what he's gotten himself into. Kurama settled down to enjoy the show, thoroughly looking forward to the next hour or so. I almost feel bad. A few hours later, after dropping a badly bruised but clearly satisfied Takeo off to a medic nin, Naruto decided it was time he left the base. He couldn't stay in there forever and pretend that an entire clan hadn't just been murdered by his brother. He had to go to the Uchiha compound and commit to memory just what he had condoned for the sake of the village. Slipping past the Umbu, he made his way onto the Uchiha grounds and could instantly feel the hairs standing up on the back of his neck stand up as he took in the deserted sights of the streets ahead. It was a veritable ghost town. Sliding through a nearby open window, he walked slowly and silently through the house until he found the scene he was looking for. It was a child's bedroom, a little girl's by the look of it. He saw the blood on the pillow and shook his head. The Umbu had clearly gone round earlier in the day removing the bodies. He absently wondered how long it would take to bury them all. It disheartened him to think how easy it was to dispose of one clan. He continued on like that for a while, walking in and out of each house and committing everything to memory whilst being sure to stay out of the Umbu's senses. At last he reached the home he had been to just the night before, the clan head house. Moving through the corridors, he smiled bitterly at the many family pictures that lined the walls. How strange it was to see Itachi with a different family. By the time Naruto had made his way around the entire compound, it was quite late in the day, but he felt he wasn't ready to go back to the base yet. If he saw his master too soon, he might just try and kill the man. Instead, Naruto went and sat down by the river for a couple hours just staring at his own reflection in the water. It was somewhat relieving to just study his own face. He had been wearing a mask for as long as he could remember, first to cover the pain of neglect and then later to cover the pleasure at having a home and a purpose. He had never been allowed to just be Naruto, to express himself how he pleased. Ah well, not everyone gets to live the free life. You're telling me. Kurama huffed in his mindscape. Re-entering the base, Naruto decided he was calm enough to visit his commander, and made his way to Danzo's chambers. Knocking lightly, he was annoyed that he didn't receive an immediate response, so he keyed his blood signature into the seal on the door and slid it open to scan the room. The old man wasn't in there. Naruto was confused now. Danzo would usually be in there waiting for Naruto at this time to give him a politics lesson. Realizing he wouldn't get any answers in there, he locked the door and made his way to his sensei's chambers. She knew everything, that woman. Turning a corner, he was unprepared to run straight into the very same woman he was looking for. Sensei, do you know where Danzo-sama is at the moment? She ignored him and kept walking. Sensei? Sensei. Why did she have to be so difficult all the time? The laboratory on level -5, she called over her shoulder after a few seconds. Satisfied, Naruto turned to take the corridor that would lead him to the staircase, but just as he reached it, he found his sensei standing there, blocking the way. What the hell? He said in a confused tone, looking back in the direction he had just seen the redhead go. Didn't you just? Naruto, she said in a dark, unsettling tone. When I give you information without being obliged to do so, you will thank me. I do not care if you are being hounded by a pack of wolves, you will find the time to thank me. Understood? Naruto had forgotten just how scary his sensei could be when she was offended, and was shaking slightly at the way she was looking down at him. Yes, ma'am. Good. With that, she moved out of his way and continued off down the corridor. He breathed out a sigh after a few seconds. She had almost given him a heart attack. Shrugging it off, he sprinted down the stairs to find out what was going on with Danzo-sama. Very few people were allowed into the -5 level laboratory, but Naruto had no restrictions in where he could go. He was Danzo's favorite, after all. Sliding open the door to the lab and strolling in, Naruto felt his skin begin to crawl and his head start to get lighter. There were several tanks on the far side of the wall containing the bodies of some of the recently slain Uchiha, all missing their eyes, and he could see jars with several pairs of Sharingan eyes being kept in them. What was going on? Drawing his gaze to the center of the room, he saw his commander strapped to an operating table with his arms outstretched. Looking closely, he realized that the man had Sharingan eyes implanted into his arms. What? This could not be happening? Danzo-sama, what is happening here? He managed to get out in a dull tone. What do you think, Naruto? We have managed to secure some of the Sharingan eyes and are using them for testing to see if we can later breed the Sharingan back into Konoha. I have volunteered myself to have a few implanted into my arm as a trial. I see. Oh, he saw all right. Both he and Kurama were thinking the exact same thing. The man has completely lost his mind. The man has completely lost his mind. The loss of the Uchiha clan today was indeed a huge blow to our military, Danzo-sama, and I can see that we cannot afford to waste valuable resources. Yes, Naruto, I am pleased to see you have the right idea. Your mind continues to serve you well. Naruto nodded slightly and turned to leave the lab, trying to keep his shaking muscles under control. Once the door slid shut behind him, he clenched his fist. Things were going to change around here, he just had to play the waiting game. Disappearing into the darkness of the base, Naruto vowed that Danzo would one day pay the price for his crimes against the Uchiha. And Namake's Naruto did not go back on his word. Time skip. It had been 5 years since the night he had truly seen the evil in his commander. 5 years since he had lost not one but two of his brothers to the corrupted system in Konoha, and 5 years' worth of torture and strenuous training with his twisted sensei. It had been a long 5 years for Namake's Naruto, but it certainly had not been dull. His mission stats could put some of Konoha's elite to shame. He was no longer a junior in the Root Division and even had his own squad. Danzo had awarded him Jounin status in his ranks, and his sensei had finally conceded that he was officially worthy of the title Fuinjutsu Master. All in all, he had grown up quite a bit. Yet you are still an academy student, the dead last I might add. The entire village still resents you, and you have made no headway with befriending that rotten Uchiha brat. I don't like to dwell on the negatives. Well, you need to start doing something, because in case you haven't noticed, you are sitting in a room full of snot-nosed brats that can barely throw a kunai, preparing to take the Kami-forsaken Academy graduation exam. This is well beneath you. Kurama hissed at his host. This was degrading. It was like if he decided to play building blocks with the Achibi in his spare time. I am fully aware of my predicament, but I'm not about to stroll into the Sandame's office and demand he promote me to Jounin now, am I? You're all calm and accepting now, but you weren't singing that same tune last night when you threw that hissy fit at your sensei after she told you that you had to take the exam in person and actually be a part of your team. Can you blame me? This is the second time I've even been in this classroom. Why should I have to waste valuable time doing this pathetic exam when I could be training? And I still don't see why I have to go to team practice and take part in their missions. A shadow clone would be more than capable. The only reason Naruto had shown up to the exam was because his sensei had bribed him with a book. It wasn't just any book, it was a history book of sorts that held information about all the notable Uzumaki in the history of the clan and had many notes from the last leader of the clan that detailed numerous techniques passed down from those notable Uzumaki. That wasn't what intrigued him most though. His sensei had shown him that on the last page something was sealed into the book, and only his or her chakra would be able to get it out. He had no idea what it was, and his sensei had told him that he could unseal it on one of two occasions, either when she gave him permission or when she died. That had been enough to let his excitement get the better of him, and he had agreed to go to the exam and participate with his team, though he had been a bit shaken up on the way to the academy by his sensei's very serious threat of castration if he unsealed the last page before it was time. He had been poring over the large, red leather-bound book when the Kyuubi had started whining about Naruto having to take the exam. Looking up to the clock, he realized it was almost time to begin. At last. He sealed the book into his palm without anyone noticing and sat up straight, waiting for his teacher to walk in. He wouldn't have much work to do today considering he had been instructed to pass as the dead last, so he was thoroughly bored at having to wait around for so long. As he had expected, the exam was disturbingly easy, which was frustrating for the young Namikes because it was a lot harder to barely pass exercises he could train a bloody rock to do. After the exam, the students who had passed were made to wait, while Iruka-sensei finalized the team placements with the Hokage. Naruto was well aware that he would be placed on a team with Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura, as that had been Danzo's entire plan in making Naruto the dead last. He wanted Naruto to keep an eye on the sole survivor of the Uchiha massacre for any signs of disloyalty, and in case he wanted to recruit the boy at a later date. Not that Naruto would ever let that happen. The blonde only wished he didn't have to tolerate the civilian girl as well. It was bad enough that he was stuck with the jerk, but which deity had he pissed off to end up with a banshee on his team? It had been 2 hours and 37 minutes since the team placements, and Naruto was about ready to slit his own throat. "Oh Sasuke-kun, are you worried our sensei has forgotten us?" Silence. She giggled. "Silly me, nothing scares you, Sasuke-kun." She giggled again. Naruto groaned, the pencil in his hand snapping loudly under his tightened grip. "You got a problem, Naruto Baka." That was it. Lifting his head from the desk, the blonde pinned the bubblegum-haired girl with a glare his sensei would have applauded, mixing in enough Ki to drop the temperature in the room by several degrees. Even the usually cut-off Sasuke spun round in shock at the intent Naruto was letting off. "My first impression of you is I don't like you guys." Naruto broke off his glare at the sound of the newcomer and turned to scowl at the man that had been causing him problems with the Sandame for many years, Hatake Kakashi. "Meet me on the roof in 5. With that, the copy Nin vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto watched as the other two scurried towards the door, not sparing a glance in his direction to see if he was following. "I can feel the team dynamic already." Rolling his eyes, he climbed out the classroom window and walked up the side of the building with his hands in his pockets, glad to be out of that classroom. Upon reaching the top, he noted that the masked shinobi was sitting alone reading a book, and he sighed to himself when he saw the cover. He decided not to speak to the man, and just sat with his legs dangling over the roof so he could stare out over the village. "That's quite the killing intent you have there, kid." Though he did not show it, the one-eyed man had been shocked that not only could Naruto do the tree-walking exercise but that he could creep up on the man without alerting his senses. "You pick those things up quickly when you're the village pariah," Naruto responded in an even tone. The boy didn't seem interested at all. There was no excitement in his tone, no resentment, there was nothing. Strange for a kid his age. Especially when you considered he wasn't just any kid. A few silent minutes later, the other two students burst onto the roof panting and, particularly in Sasuke's case, trying to look unfazed by the long run up the stairs. Both sets of eyes widened when they saw Naruto sitting on the edge of the roof like he had been there all along. Kakashi decided to break the silence, and had all the students sit across from him. "Right, perhaps we should get to know each other a bit better. We can begin with you telling me a bit about yourselves. Likes, dislikes, and dream for the future. Pinky, you're up first." The girl in question shuffled nervously in her seat before speaking up. Perhaps you could go first to show us how it's done, sensei? She asked the gray-haired man in a cutesy voice. What? Is she retarded? Kami help me get off this team. Naruto thought in his mind. Kurama had gone to sleep earlier to avoid listening to the Pinkette swoon over the Uchiha, so Naruto received no response in his mindscape. Very well. My name is Hitaki Kakashi and I like some things, I also dislike other things and my dream for the future. Right, your turn, Pinky. Although she wasn't satisfied with the answers, or lack thereof, Sakura coughed to clear her throat and spoke up once more. My name is Harino Sakura, I like. She trailed off, giggling and glancing over at Sasuke before continuing, and I dislike Naruto Baka. She grit out, shooting the blonde a glare to which he rolled his eyes. And my dream for the future? She trailed off once more, giggling and blushing whilst peeping at the Uchiha boy who was staring intently into the distance. Kakashi didn't comment. He figured she would grow out of the fangirlism soon enough. Okay, Broody, your turn. Sasuke grunted before speaking in a low tone, my name is Uchiha Sasuke. Sakura giggled. I hate a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and destroy a certain somebody. By the end of it, Sakura was swooning over the Uchiha and his cool, Kakashi was giving a deadpan stare, and Naruto? Naruto looked about ready to throw the self-proclaimed Avenger off the roof. Right. Blondie anytime now. This was what Kakashi had been waiting to hear. Naruto had been an enigma to him for years and he finally had the perfect opportunity to investigate the inconsistency surrounding his sensei's son. He had taken his concerns over the boy's behavior to the Sandaime, but had been told he was obsessing and to leave the boy alone. Not anymore. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. The stress on his surname not being missed by the Jounin. I like peace and quiet. He shot the pink-haired girl a dirty look before continuing. I dislike arrogance and ignorance. Another dirty look, this time at the Uchiha kid. That was interesting. Ignorance, huh? And my dream for the future is none of your business. He shot a final narrowed glare at Kakashi, and it was as if the man could hear the boy's thoughts. I know your game, Hitaki. The older man responded with an eye smile before clapping his hands and standing up. Well, that's it for today. Tomorrow you will meet me at Training Ground 7 at 8 a.m. Oh, and if I were you I wouldn't eat breakfast. You'll only throw up. He gave one last smile, lingering on the scowling face of Naruto slightly longer before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Sasuke turned and headed back to the staircase with Sakura hot on his heels, begging for a date. Naruto only sighed before walking down the side of the building and heading off towards the root base. Soon he could feel Kakashi tailing him, so decided he would run rings around the village until he lost the man before making his way home. Kyoko-sensei sat patiently in her office waiting for her student to return. She had spent years picturing this day, and there was no way Naruto would come back happy from the team placements, and she was going to enjoy every second of his misery. As she took another sip of her tea, she felt his approach. She grinned and placed the cup back down on the table. This was going to be good. As if right on cue, the blonde stormed into her office, slamming the door behind him and flinging himself into the chair opposite her. Nice day, Naruto-chan? He scowled up at her. Nice day? Nice day. Today has been possibly the worst day of my life. I swear I would love nothing more than to rip out that Harino tart's larynx. No, I'm lying. There isn't much I wouldn't give to run my sword through Uchiha Sasuke's throat. This was well worth the wait. Kyoko was having a wonderful time. And what about your sensei? He is an elite jounin after all, well-renowned. 2 hours and 40 minutes late, that is not elite. That is unacceptable. And what does he take me for? That likes, dislikes and dream for the future bullshit was just so he had an excuse to question me. It sure does sound like it. This was better than she had imagined. I am not passing the second test. There is nothing you can say to me. His face was set in a stubborn frown. Oh no, he wasn't going to ruin her fun so soon. Okay then, Naruto. Their eyes met and neither spoke for a second. What? Naruto was on alert now. There was no way his sensei would just accept that. I said it was okay not to pass the secondary exam. So why do I feel like this is a trap? There's no trap. If you don't want to pass the test and complete the mission assigned to you to keep an eye on Uchiha Sasuke as his teammate, I can only assume you do not want to be a root shinobi. What? I know. Root shinobi do not abandon missions. If you are no longer a root shinobi, you are a liability, and we cannot tolerate liabilities. I never said. You are hereby stripped of all titles previously held and will have your memory wiped before being thrown back into regular society. No. No! I take it back. I will complete the mission. There's no need to do that. Some people might think his sensei was joking, but Naruto knew Kyoko, and she had not joked once in the 8 years he had known her. He was not about to have his memory stripped from him and be left with the brain of a toddler. Good. Tomorrow you will ensure your team passes Kakashi's test. More likely than not, he will stick to the Bell test, to which the key is teamwork. Failure is not an option. Dismissed. Nodding curtly to his sensei and walking towards the door, Naruto groaned quietly to himself. My life cannot get any worse. Just wait till you go on your first D-rank mission. He froze in the doorway. D-rank mission? He had been taught that C-rank was the lowest mission level, though he had never even been on one of those before. What the hell was a D-rank mission, and why was his sensei smirking at him like that? Day 2. It was the second day that Naruto would have to spend with Team 7, and he was seriously contemplating not getting out of bed ever again. I would probably learn more here anyway. I can just tell that nosy Hatake is going to be spending too much time stalking me and not nearly enough time preparing those genin for the real world. So just kill him and you'll get a new sensei. Problem solved. The Kyuubi didn't see why Naruto felt the man deserved to live. The village wasn't going to miss one lazy jounin. Don't tempt me. No, I'm going to have to use a different approach to get things done this time. I think I'll pay Hatake Kakashi a little visit before training today. He had been thinking it over during the night, and reasoned that there was no way he could keep up the stupid act and hope to get anywhere with his public ninja career. He needed a cover story for his behavior during the academy, but what to say? I still think you should just kill him. Or better yet, you could tie him up and leave him in your Kyoko-sensei's office. I don't recall you ever giving her a gift in the past. I just want the man off my back. I don't want him out of active duty and in therapy sessions for the next 10 years. The Kyuubi snorted. Well, keep it as a backup plan at least. Whatever. Rolling his eyes, an action he was certain he was going to be doing a lot later that day, Naruto slid out of bed and got dressed. He had a scarecrow to find. An hour later he strolled lightly into the clearing that held the village's memorial stone, clutching a single white tulip in his hand. Kakashi had not yet sensed his presence. Perfect. Let the show begin. This was going to be an award-worthy performance. Kakashi-sensei? Naruto whispered innocently once he was a couple feet behind the man. The gray-haired man jumped slightly and spun round at hearing the timid voice. Naruto! I didn't hear you arrive. Were you looking for me? Kakashi had not been expecting to get time alone with the boy so soon. He had been unable to sleep the previous night, trying to think how he could get closer to the boy, and hadn't considered the child might come to him. When he didn't get an immediate response, he looked closely and saw that Naruto had a fearful look in his eye and was dipping his head slightly. It was as though the boy desperately wanted to tell him something but was worried the man would resent him. Had Naruto always been this fragile? It made Kakashi's heart drop to think that he had done such a terrible job at looking out for his sensei's son. What would the man say to him if he were here? What a sucker. Look at him. So pathetic. You've barely had to say a word. This is going to be so easy. Is there something you would like to say to me, Naruto? Whatever it is, I promise I won't be mad. The thing is, I've been lying all this time, sensei. To the Sandaime, to my teachers, to everyone. I don't want to do it anymore, sensei. All I ever wanted was to be a super cool ninja and have people look up to me instead of those hateful looks. I tried asking for help in the beginning, but the teachers barely want to look at me, let alone interact with me, and Gigi is always busy and I don't have any parents, and He paused for dramatic effect and glanced up slightly to see the pained look on the older man's face. Hook. I know no one wants me around because I'm a Jinchuriki. He had to struggle not to laugh as the man in front of him flinched involuntarily. Where did you hear that? Kakashi couldn't believe his ears. Someone had broken the law, and when he found out who, no deity would be able to help them. Some drunk chunin told me years ago, and I went and read about it in the library. Well, I sort of borrowed a book from the library, a few books. Look, what I'm trying to say, sensei, is that I pretended to be happy and stupid so that I could study and train alone without having to worry that anyone would try and sabotage me. I'm not nearly as dumb as my records would suggest, and the truth is I was scared that whatever team I was put on would be failed because it had me on it, so I did badly deliberately to be put on a team the council wouldn't want to fail. Kakashi breathed out. It was all starting to make sense now. The pranks and the fact he always skipped classes were so that no one would suspect him of actually being intelligent. How had the Jounin missed that? I felt I had to tell you because I don't want to start my ninja career out with a lie. My whole life has been a lie. Even my last name isn't right. It's not Uzumaki, it's Namikaze. The silence in the clearing was deafening. Lying. What? The entire world seemed to come to a halt for Kakashi. Naruto knew. He knew. How? He received a deadpan stare that screamed, "Are you kidding me? Just look at me and consider all the facts. I will not believe it was a coincidence that the Yondaime chose a random blonde-haired, blue-eyed chibi of himself to be a Jinchuriki on the same night his pregnant wife gave birth. Bullshit. I am Namikaze Naruto, son of the Yondaime Hokage. Don't try and lie to me. Naruto, I've had no one to look out for me my entire life, and even though I have a team I still feel as alone as ever. Please, give me a chance and I promise you won't regret being my sensei. I just want to feel as though I belong." Their eyes met, and Kakashi felt his heart melt at the sight of the desperate blue eyes staring back at him. And sinker! The Kyuubi had been chewing on some bones and avidly watching the scene unfold, being in the kid's mind made for some great entertainment. And now for the finishing touches. Brushing past the frozen man, Naruto knelt down in front of the memorial stone and laid the tulip on the ground in front of it before lifting his hand to wipe a tear from his eyes. A bird landed on the stone and whistled out a sweet tune that put a small smile on the boy's face. I once overheard a woman say that white tulips were a symbol of forgiveness. I've had pain and resentment in my heart so long that it's been ripping me apart from the inside. The tears were spilling freely now, and Kakashi looked like he had been stabbed through the heart with a sword of ice. I'm definitely adding this memory to my ultimate collection. Kurama was clutching his side and laughing heavily. This was a magnificent performance. But I'm a ninja now and it's time I let go. Despite what they did to me, I know that they loved me, and one day I will get to rush into their arms and feel their love surround me. Like how the wind surrounds the trees, gently caressing its leaves. He lifted his hand slowly and stroked the small bird before watching it fly away. Someone get this guy a podium and a violinist. Naruto turned and lifted his tear-lined eyes to meet Kakashi's guilt-ridden ones and choked out a soft whisper, "I don't want to have to pretend anymore." He sniffed before casting his eyes back to the ground nervously. And the award goes to Namikaze Naruto. Watching as Kakashi tried to collect himself, Naruto took a moment to step into his mindscape and give a deep bow to the Kyuubi, who was clapping loudly and whooping. The blonde grinned. They didn't get moments like this often enough. "You won't have to, Naruto. You're a Konoha shinobi now and we look after our own." That had been a week ago and, frankly, Naruto didn't believe a word of it. His team had somehow passed the second test and he had finally found out what a D-rank mission was. The last time the Sandaime had seen anyone ballsy enough to glare at him like that, he had been fighting on the front lines of a war. Currently, Naruto was shoveling horse manure from one side of a field to the other. I feel like I've said this enough times that you should have done something about it already, but this is beneath us. Naruto started twitching, which caused Sakura to scurry fearfully from him. "Do not start on me again. I am almost at the end of my tether, and if I don't get a mission soon I swear I am going to start attacking the villagers that request these chores. So hurry up and get a mission already. If you don't kill something soon I am going to keep you up day and night doing impressions of your pink-haired teammate." Naruto was about to retort angrily when he was jolted out of his mindscape by the sound of Sasuke's voice. "Dobe, stop standing there with that stupid look on your face and hurry up." Looking from his shovel to the Uchiha, Naruto's mind was already made up. Moving faster than the other boy could follow, he swung the heavy tool straight for the boy's face, only to growl disappointedly when it was intercepted by their sensei. Now, that is not how teammates behave." Sasuke apologized to Naruto. "Naruto has been working the fastest all day, a moment's rest is fair enough." Kakashi sighed. Naruto apologized to Sasuke. "We don't attack our comrades." "Not a chance." The man sighed again. When would these two start to get along? "Apologize to Sasuke-kun. How dare you attack him, idiot!" Sakura screeched at the blonde. "I will rip your..." "Naruto!" Kakashi scolded. This day was not getting any better. "All of you get back to work." Kakashi sat to one side and pulled out his book, pretending to read it while he considered all that had happened since Naruto's confession at the memorial stone the week before. Kakashi had awkwardly tried to reassure the boy that he would not be punished for hiding his ability before he went to report to the Sandaime. The aged Kage had been quite surprised that Naruto had been training alone, but was also relieved that the boy was more like Minato than they had originally thought. It was worrying that he knew about his Jinchuriki status and heritage, but they reasoned he had to find out sooner or later. In the end, he had told Kakashi that they had failed the boy enough and that he should endeavor to look out for the Namikaze heir a bit better in future. Nothing more had been said on the topic since, though the Sandame requested regular updates of his team's progress. The issue now was actually getting the three kids to resemble a team. Sasuke and Naruto were constantly at each other's throats, and Sakura's obsession with the Uchiha didn't help. Kami, what was he going to do to fix the team dynamic? He wished his sensei was around to give him some advice. Watching them leave at the end of the day, not looking any more amicable, he started to wonder if he was cut out to be a sensei in the first place. Trudging back to the base, Naruto found himself thinking about the first time he had been allowed out of the village. It had been a B-rank mission to negotiate re-establishing a connection between Root and a powerful crime lord and his organization that was terrorizing a small country near Kumo at the time. His team consisted of Kyoko-sensei, Itachi and himself, though they had to use their Root codenames outside of the village: Hu, Karasu and Tatsuru. Tatsuru! Pay attention. This will be your first time out of the village, and I won't have you screwing it up. The small 6-year-old blonde had been so excited to finally be going on a mission that he had started daydreaming about how awesome it would be while his sensei was debriefing the team. Right, to summarize, we will meet with the leader of the organization Kaijin and listen to his proposal to do business with Root. If his proposal sounds profitable, we will accept and begin making plans to station some of our agents in the area, which will also give us a stronghold near Kumo. If his proposal is unsatisfactory, then we kill him and take control of his organization, choosing someone amongst his ranks to be our pawn. Understood? Hi, Karasu responded. Hul waited a moment for Tatsuru to respond, but he seemed to be going over her words in his head and deciding if he understood or not. Is there a problem, Tatsuru? Well, I don't get it. Why do we have to kill him if we don't like his proposals? Can't we just work with someone else? Hua sighed. That is because if he makes demands we have no desire of meeting, he will soon become an enemy and a liability when we don't stick to our end of the deal. Better we kill him and promote someone that will be easier to manipulate without having to compromise our goals. Understood? Yeah, I think so. It was Karasu's turn to sigh. You are supposed to say hi or yes ma'am, Tatsuru. You must always show respect to your superiors. Okay, I'll remember next time, but why do I have to be Tatsuru before we've left the fort? Why can't I be Naruto? You need to get used to the name Tatsuru, as it will be your second name from now on. And this is not a fort, it is a base. Karasu was smiling at the young boy but was beginning to get frustrated. Tatsuru had been constantly asking questions since the day he had joined, and he rarely accepted the answers without argument. But... Tatsuru! The boy jumped. Hua-sensei had stood up and slammed her palms on the desk, causing all the paperwork that was on it to fly everywhere. The torches had all gone out in the room and a strange red glow had surrounded her person, providing the only light source. Her hair was flailing behind her as if she was a being possessed, and her eyes held flames in them that promised pain. You will answer to that name until we return to the base. You will show respect to your superiors and you will behave like a shinobi at all times. Am I understood? Hi! The poor boy was frozen in place, terrified to even blink for fear of incurring his sensei's wrath. Excellent. She had sat back down calmly and taken a sip of her tea. The torches were relit, and her papers were all somehow back on her desk and stacked neatly. The shaken-up Tatsuru turned to Karasu to see if he was affected and was shocked that the older boy held a blank expression on his face. Pack for a 7-day all-round trip and meet me at the southern exit tunnel. You have half an hour. Dismissed. Running through the base, Tatsuru couldn't keep the grin off of his face. Today was the day he would set out on his first mission and prove himself worthy of the title shinobi. Danzojiji had told him that being a shinobi wasn't all about saving princesses and being a hero, and that if he would ever hope to understand the great sacrifice that was shinobihood, he would have to go out into the world and experience the cruel reality of it firsthand. Tatsuru couldn't wait. He knew that his village was as full of evil as it was good, and he wanted to grow strong enough to maintain the balance and ensure its survival. The boy held no real love for Konoha, but his parents had died so that it would stand, and he wouldn't make their sacrifice and his early years of suffering for nothing. Konoha would stand even if he had to hold it up on his own. Bursting into his room to pack his things, the grin not having slipped from his face, Tatsuru paused to look at his sword resting on the edge of his bed. Lifting it slowly and drawing the dark metal blade from its sheath, he ran his fingers gently across it, and his face settled into a sad smile. I am Namake's Naruto, shinobi of the leaf. They had taken his childhood, they had taken his family, they had even tried to take away his rightful name. They would not take away his shinobi status. He would not allow it. Changing into his armor, he considered himself in the mirror. Kami, I look so badass right now. The QB snorted in the young boy's mindscape and wondered to himself, not for the first time, why he had acknowledged the boy as a worthy host. Watching as the boy raced to the southern exit, he found himself reminded of another passionate, spiky-haired individual. So different yet so alike. The trio had managed to slip out of the village easily enough, and were now aboard a small ferry boat that would take them to their destination. Tatsuro was sitting on the edge of the boat and gazing out at the open sea, encapsulated by its moonlit beauty. So engaged was he in the eternal waves that he did not feel Karasu approach him from behind. Tatsuro, you have not eaten, and as you well know that could hinder you if we enter a combat situation. Come inside and have something. Forgive me, Anai-san, the sea is just so free and full of mystery to me. I had not realized I had been sitting here so long. Tatsuro, be careful with your words. You must call me Karasu when we are on these sorts of missions. I see that you are truly having your eyes open to the beauty of the world, so I will permit you to stay out here for a few more minutes. Something to consider though. We know only too well that our actions are only a drop in the sea, but we must not forget that without any drops there would be no sea. Leaving the young boy to ponder his words and look out at the sea once more, Karasu hummed lightly to himself as he made his way back to the lower deck to consult with his sensei. Hoitaicho had made them disembark a small way out from the mainland and run across the water to enter the foreign land from a different location so that they would not be spotted by enemy Nin. It was as they approached the land that Tatsuro once again decided to voice his confusion. But Hua-sensei, I just don't get it. If this guy is supposed to be welcoming us to do business, why wouldn't he have sent someone to greet and escort us back to him unharmed? Shut up, Tatsuro. Hua had explained to Naruto repeatedly that those customs did not apply to underground crime lords, but he would not let up. But sensei. No. Shut up. This is the last time I will say it. Yes, a welcome party is usually sent out. No, we will not be meeting the welcome party. Yes, we will be meeting Kaijin's leader, and no, we cannot trust him to greet us warmly even though he is a potential business partner. There is every chance he will have sent assassins to take us out before we hit the mainland, and I won't risk it just because you want to be greeted with a horse-drawn carriage and your own fucking parade. Fine. I get it. The boy huffed, missing the dark look thrown his way as he scanned the forest they were approaching for signs of activity. Karasu remained silent throughout the run to the mainland, thankful on Tatsuro's behalf that Hua-sensei wouldn't deal with the boy in her usual manner for fear of drawing attention to their location. They were wearing suppression seals that allowed them enough access to their chakra to run across the water so that they would not be sensed by any shinobi in the area. They had ran for about half an hour before Hua-taicho stopped in front of a seemingly random tree and began running her fingers over it. Tatsuro was about to question loudly but had his mouth clamped shut by Karasu before he could even take a breath. Looking up into his brother figure's face, he saw the older boy lift a finger to his lips to motion for him to remain silent. Nodding slightly, he took a light breath when his mouth was released and looked back at Karasu questioningly. Hua-sensei had still not turned around and was carefully examining the tree, so Karasu signaled for the younger boy to reach out with his senses. Tapping into the Kyuubi's chakra, he was instantly hyper-aware of his surroundings. They were surrounded. His battle training kicked in, and he quickly zoned in on each enemy nin's location and chakra capacity, trying to gauge their level based on their chakra development. It appeared to be mostly Chunin, and judging by how relaxed they were not aware they had the root Nin in their midst. Suddenly his sensei sat down in front of the tree and bit her thumb, spreading the blood across the bark before rapidly running through a long series of hand seals ending in the Tora seal. His eyes widened as intricate seals spread out all across the trunk of the tree and disappeared as quickly as they came. As he blinked, a door opened up at the base of the tree. It was a secret tunnel. How had his sensei known it was there? Wisely choosing to wait till later and ask her, he followed Hua-taicho and Karasu into the tunnel, starting slightly when the door closed behind them. He was on high alert now, and this was no simulation test. He could not afford to miss a single thing. The tunnel was long and dimly lit by torches lining the walls, much like the current root base. He felt his heart rate pick up slightly as he could tell they were almost at the end. A large metal door was in sight, and it was enough that his excitement picked up once more. He was ready for whatever was behind there. Just as they reached the door, Hua-taicho turned to pin Tatsuro with a stern look, warning him not to mess up. He nodded in return, not turning from her gaze. Seemingly satisfied, she signaled Itachi to be prepared and placed her hand on the door. Yet again an intricate array of seals spread out across the door, flaring a deep red before blowing a massive opening in the titanium structure. Pausing to allow the smoke to clear, Hua-taicho calmly stepped into the room with her hair swaying behind her. My, what do we have here? Her voice was menacingly sweet as she sauntered past the many scientists in the underground lab, making her way to a now trembling man at the head of the room with Karasu and Tatsuro in tow. Jomiai, old friend, I had not been expecting to find you here. Tatsuro recognized the man from his picture in the root records. He was an incredibly intelligent scientist who made powerful explosives for the root division. However, he should not have been here working with the Kaijin organization without Danzo's approval. The man's days were officially numbered. Ho ho ho, he managed to stutter out, shrinking down against the back wall and cowering from the masked woman's gaze. I was blackmailed into working for Kaijin. Bishamon, he took my family, and he has them held hostage. He says he will turn them over to wild bandits if I don't create all these explosives to sell to the great villages, beginning with Kumo. Please, I am sorry, and I will tell you everything I know. Please, ho ho you. Tatsuro moved around the many worktops, taking in what the scientists had been up to. He noted that each time he got near one of the frozen men they would flinch. He didn't like instilling fear in people that were being used against their will, but this was the life he had signed up to, and he wouldn't show weakness here. Hua did not speak for a few moments, and Jomiai faltered under her gaze. He was a blubbering wreck at her feet, pleading for forgiveness. Eventually she clicked her fingers and all the other men in the room lined up against the walls. Yes, Jomiai, you will tell me everything you know. Starting with Bishamon's game and inviting us here. The man nodded fervently, clearly relieved that Hua had decided not to kill him. Hua-sama, what about Maya family? We will deal with that later. You have my word. Now talk. And talk he did. It seemed the meeting with Bishamon, Kaijin's leader, would be rather interesting. Bishamon made a rather imposing sight, sat in his throne of skulls. His thick, muscular arms were constantly bulging, and he wore only a thick sash of leather across his broad and hairy chest. On each hand he wore a pair of rusty, blood-stained knuckle dusters, and on his large bald head he wore a helmet with two horns sticking out of each side. Directly behind him the fireplace was lit, and he had two of his thugs stood either side of it, each carrying an axe and doing their best to look intimidating, though they were trembling slightly at the terrifying sight in front of them. Not Bishamon, but Hua. She was sat opposite Bishamon across the long wooden table, and had a small red-headed boy stood beside her, seemingly unaffected by the tense atmosphere. The woman was exuding a huge and raw amount of power, and all she was doing was sipping a cup of tea she had pulled from seemingly nowhere while staring, they assumed anyway, as both her and the boy wore masks straight into Bishamon's bloodshot eyes. So let me get this straight, Bishamon-san, she whispered sweetly, tilting her head slightly to consider the hulking man sat in front of her. You would like me to reveal the locations of our nearby bases before you decide to do business with us? Her tone of voice was calm but held a hint of warning to it that was currently rubbing Bishamon the wrong way. You heard me, woman. Bishamon growled out at the redhead. I won't have you and your people thinking you can walk all over me and come in here like you run the place. I want to know everywhere that you will have your people stationed so that I can keep an eye on things and make sure you aren't screwing us over. Got it? No. You can consider that request officially denied. Hua had stood up now and was slowly making her way down the table to where Bishamon was leant back in his chair and eyeing her menacingly, baring his yellow teeth at her with a small growl. Take one more step, bitch, and my men here will cut you down where you stand. Hua chuckled softly, and the guards in the room were incredibly unsettled by her calm demeanor. No one ever behaved this way in front of Bishamon. No one who was alive to boast about it anyway. Despite her chuckle, the woman had stopped walking, and the two guards couldn't help but smirk at seeing her act in her place. They quickly felt a cold chill down their spines though as she turned towards them, having noticed their smirks. Turning to walk back to her chair, she settled down and crossed her legs before taking a sip of her tea and looking back at Bishamon once more. Will you work with us or not, Bishamon? Don't try that threatening tone with me, you bitch. I've made my terms clear and that's the end of it. Is that so? Tatsuro. She did not need to say another word as Bishamon watched with wide eyes as the small boy vanished from his position beside the woman, and the bear-like man spun round when he heard both his guards drop to the ground behind him, their axes clattering on the ground beside them. Dead. Throat slit. Spinning back around, he saw that the boy was now stood beside his master, and was resheathing his sword, perfectly calm. I have a different idea, Bishamon. You are going to provide me with the details of all of your business associates, and you are going to sign over all of Kaijin's assets to our organization. Then you are going to die. We can't tolerate liabilities, as you can imagine. How does that deal sound to you? The menacingly sweet tone she had used before was gone, and her voice was pure venom as she removed her mask and stared straight into Bishamon's eyes. The man blanched at the steel look in her violet eyes but was not about to back down to a woman on his own turf. Ha! You think those guards are all I've got? You and your brat are finished. This whole place is surrounded by Kumo Nin just rearing to drag your pretty butt away. She chuckled once more, and this time the man felt a sick, foreboding feeling in the pit of his stomach. Oh really? Tell me, where are these Kumo Nin to help you now? Also, did I mention that we killed 14 spying ninja on our way in? Couldn't have them interrupting our meeting now, could we? She took another sip of her tea and clicked her fingers. Bishamon was unprepared as strange characters suddenly spread out across his body, binding him to the chair despite his most violent efforts to break free of the invisible force. The boy. He had moved from his place again. He must have gotten behind him somehow. Bishamon didn't have long to dwell on Tatsura's whereabouts though, as a figure dropped down into a crouch on the table in front of him, encapsulating the man in his strange red and black eyes. The man almost immediately fell into unconsciousness. The last thing he heard was the commanding voice of the red-haired woman. You will meet my demands. The negotiations are over. It hadn't taken long for Hu to interrogate the man for information, while Itachi forged all the necessary documents to write over Kaijin's assets. She had put Tatsura on guard duty while they ransacked Bishamon's base, and it was a good 20 minutes before a small red blur burst into the room. 2 squads from Kumo fast approaching from the north. Mostly made up of Chunin. 5 minutes till arrival. Orders, ma'am? He got out quickly and succinctly. It seems we've ran out of time together, Bishamon. She whispered to the bound man. The man was covered in blood and panting heavily. One of his eyes had been gouged out, and he was missing both hands. Hua plunged a kunai into the crying man's throat and turned to her student. Tatsuru! You will hold off the enemy while Itachi and I finish up here and destroy this base. You must not fail. We will be with you as soon as possible. Understood? Hi, sensei. With that, the small boy vanished from the room and set off at full speed to engage the Kumo nin. His adrenaline levels rapidly rising. This was the excitement he had been waiting for. You and me both, brat. You and me both. Right, listen to me. Don't just go jumping into their midst with your fists raised, you need a strategy. You'll have to catch them off guard. I can tap into your senses and watch your back for you as well, so this should be a piece of cake. Got it, kid? Hi. Thanks, Rama. For the last time, don't call me that. The boy always ignored his protests to the nickname. Hee, let's do this. Landing lightly on a high branch where he could see the approaching nin, Tatsuru slipped a shuriken out of his holster and timed the throw perfectly. The shuriken hit a tree branch, narrowly missing one of the rear shinobi's head as the others quickly tried to get into a formation and sense where the danger was coming from. It was too late. Tatsuru brought his hand up into a seal and the shuriken exploded upon contact, taking off the unlucky target's head and blowing back those that had tried to move closer to the victim. As they were distracted by the huge explosion, he dropped down behind one of the others and drove his kunai straight into the woman's solar plexus. Leaping back to dodge a wild punch, he dropped into a crouch and swept the different attackers' feet out from under them, quickly getting in close to slam his palm into the man's chest. The other Kumo nin's eyes widened as their comrade suddenly turned rock hard, frozen in place. One of their group gasped as the small masked boy then smashed his fist into the man, causing him to shatter into many bloody pieces. 3 down, 5 to go. The boy mentally noted. Sidestepping out of the way of a sword shoved his way, Tatsuru spun on his heel to deliver a kick to the woman's head, but she was able to duck and ram her kunai into his chest. He burst into smoke. Shit, it was some sort of clone. Where has he gone? The 5 shinobi moved into a small circle, back to back, whilst they scanned the trees for some sign of the enemy shinobi. None of them could move fast enough as a hand burst out of the ground and dragged one of the shorter ones down into the earth. On instinct they had all jumped away so none could act as the boy's head was swiftly detached from his head, the attacker having vanished once more. The 4 were about to retreat, but suddenly, as one, they all collapsed to the ground. Dead. Tatsuru stepped out from behind a tree and frowned at the new arrivals. Hu and Karasu were now leant casually against the tree and staring impassively back at him. I had that under control. I was totally gonna take out 2 squads on my own. He whined at his sensei. That cockiness of yours will get you killed if you don't watch it, brat. Hu responded evenly, though her tone was light and playful. Come on, the mission is complete, so let's get out of here. Karasu, who had appeared by Tatsuru's side and was ruffling the younger boy's hair and chuckling at the groan he received in return, quickly vanished and gathered all the deceased shinobi in a small clearing nearby before taking a step back. Fire style, great fireball technique, he called out, watching impassively as his jutsu destroyed the bodies of the Kumo nin. That was awesome. You are so teaching me that when we get home. He heard Tatsuru call out excitedly. Motioning for the boy to follow, Karasu made after his sensei, who had long since disappeared into the trees. Looking back at the burnt bodies, Tatsuru's starstruck face turned into a frown slightly, but he shrugged it off and ran off after his team. It was time to go home and learn some new jutsu. No one would believe you had just taken out a Chunin squad if they saw that stupid, childish look on your face. Always changing emotion, you're a hard one to pin down, Namikaze Naruto. Isn't that why you like me, my nine-tailed friend? I don't like anyone. The great fox replied in an amused tone. Whatever, liar. The fox could only sigh as the boy appeared in front of him and stuck his tongue out. Being stuck with the kid wasn't going to be boring, at least. Jolting out of the memory, Naruto was feeling a slight bit calmer and somewhat inspired. Things were so different now and not at all how he had once imagined, but he still had hope. Sitting at the end of his bed to unseal his sword and running his hand across the dark metal blade once more, the nostalgic smile he had slowly turned into a frown. He wasn't going to do this every day until the Chunin exams in a few months. He had to get a mission, and he had to get one immediately. His mind made up, he resealed his sword and disappeared into the dark corridors of the base to confront his sensei. Please, sensei, for the sake of my sanity, give me a mission. They were in the base's shower room with at least 10 other shinobi, all men, in the room with them, though Kyoko wasn't the least bit fazed by their presence. Naruto was not showering. Instead, he was leaning against the wall beside his sensei, who was rinsing a disturbing amount of blood off of her person and pleading with the woman for a mission. You are on a mission. You are keeping an eye on the Uchiha kid and… That is not a mission, it's a push to suicide. There must be some way I can have a real assignment. Come on, please. Fingering what looked like pieces of brain tissue from her hair. How did she even? I honestly do not want to know. She finally let out a sigh and turned to face her student, who was deliberately looking in any other direction possible. Staring at him for a couple seconds, an idea came to her mind. Leave us. It was a barely audible whisper, but the authority in her voice was enough that the other showers were quickly turned off and every other person in the room vanished, leaving the two alone. Naruto was torn between emotions now. On the one hand, he was excited that his sensei might be about to give him a mission, but on the other he was terrified she might be about to attack him for being insubordinate. Very well, he let out the breath he absently noted he had been holding at hearing that. On this occasion I will grant your wish. There's one mission that became available earlier this evening. There are a couple catches though. 1. You will have to somehow get your team a specific C rank mission tomorrow in order to accept this A rank. 2. You obviously cannot let your team find out you are on a separate and simultaneous mission, so will have to take extra precaution around that Hataki. And lastly, 3. You will owe me one favor. Naruto gulped. A favor? He just knew he would hate whatever it came round to be. But it would be worth an A rank. Right. Right. Naruto clutched his head at the bellowed response. You don't have to deafen me for Kami's sake. Fine. Mission details? Yes, it would be worth it. He couldn't go on with the ranks much longer. Kyoko had at this point recommenced rinsing the blood and body tissue out of her hair and took a moment getting a piece of bone cartilage out that was somehow knotted in before responding. Seriously, what was she? I'm not asking, so drop it. Naruto still had a throbbing head from the Kyuubi's roaring and was certain he didn't want to know how his sensei had come to be in the state she was in. First, the supposed C rank. The thing is, I don't believe it has been ranked accurately. I think it's actually an A rank as well. Naruto perked up at that. He was going to do 2 A rank missions simultaneously? Oh yeah? He was that awesome. This is more like it. You can say that again. A bridge builder from the Land of Waves arrived in the village earlier requesting an escort back to his home. Protection from bandits, blah blah blah, typical C rank stuff, right? Right. The issue is, we have information that the Land of Waves is currently having the life choked out of it by a man whose name I'm sure you're familiar with, Gato. Shipping magnate and crime lord. Oh yeah, this was sounding promising to the Namikaze heir. Yes. Now if Tazuna is building a bridge to the mainland, then that would make it difficult for Gato to maintain his stronghold there. Precisely, and for something that important I doubt he would send common thugs after the bridge builder. He would want a guaranteed death and has enough money to hire. Missing Nin? Oh, he was going to enjoy this. Not nearly as much as I'm going to enjoy this. There's been no excitement lately. You can kill twice as many people to make up for it. Finish my sentence again, Naruto, and I will sew your lips shut with a rusty needle and strap you to a dead bear in the forest of death. Sorry, ma'am. Now was not a good time to get on her bad side. She was doing him a favor after all. Seeing that Naruto was going to stay quiet, the Uzumaki woman continued on. So I deduce that Tazuna is lying to those brainless mission desk shinobi because he probably can't afford an A rank mission. Anyway, That isn't our main concern, as I'm sure you and the copy Nin can handle a couple missing Nin. As you can imagine, we don't give a damn about the land of waves. Your real mission is to assassinate Gato and move all his shares and profits over to Root under our secret name. Gato is a former business partner of Danzo's, but it seems he's been dealing with some shady characters we cannot tolerate a connection to. Understood? Yes, ma'am. I will be assigning agents Terra and Sai to assist you from the shadows if necessary. Understood. Good. Now pass me a towel. Reaching into his kunai holster, Naruto quickly hinged one of his weapons into a large fluffy towel and handed it to his sensei before excusing himself to go get some rest. He had to get thinking on how he was going to get that C rank after all. It was that tricky clause that Naruto was pondering as he ate his ramen at Ichiraka's stall. He didn't particularly like ramen, but the gentleman who owned the stall, Tsuchi, had been particularly kind to him when he was younger, and Naruto had made it his business to be the stall's #1 customer, as his way of saying thanks. He didn't exactly dislike the dish, and the miso ramen was actually pretty good, so it was no problem for him. He only ever went at night though, so that other patrons wouldn't be turned away at his presence, but he ate enough food to keep his title as #1 customer. Ordering another bowl, he immediately wished he hadn't, as he felt a familiar chakra signature approach him. Hatake Kakashi. What does he want now? Beats me. It won't look good if you cancel your order now, and he'll probably follow you anyway. Might as well indulge him a bit. TCH, he really is starting to grind on my gears again. Ever since Naruto spilled his heart out to the man at the memorial stone, the man had made it his business to go looking for Naruto at random times and tried to get past the emotional wall the boy had erected around himself. Needless to say, the visits were never welcome. Good evening, Naruto. You seem to have calmed down quite a bit since earlier. Good evening, Kakashi-sensei. He hated calling the man sensei. He hasn't taught me a damn thing, but had long been taught by his real sensei to respect his superiors. I suppose I've had a bit of time to think things over. Oh? Care to share your conclusions? Sure. I've concluded that Uchiha Sasuke and I will never get along, and that Haruno Sakura isn't going to change her ways until she sees her life flash before her eyes. I just want to be on a proper team, and frankly, ours is anything but. We need something to really bring us together, to really make them see that the world is so much bigger than their issues. I suppose it's differences in growing up. Kakashi was both sad and impressed at Naruto's observations. A big part of him agreed with what the boy was saying, but he wished it wasn't true. Maybe if he could take them on a mission away from the village? No, the Sandaime wouldn't permit it. They needed more time. Time would help his team, he was almost sure of it. You know, Naruto, I still don't know your likes, dislikes, and dream for the future? Your real answers, not snide comments about your teammates. He probed. He was desperate to get to know his sensei's son a bit, and make up for the years of neglect. I don't know yours either. Naruto didn't sound interested, but Kakashi wasn't about to give up so easily. I like reading, I dislike traitors, and I suppose I don't know what I want from the future. The last bit was a lie, but he wasn't about to bear himself out to a 12-year-old, sensei's son or not. Naruto saw right through the lie and knew enough about Kakashi from the root records to deduce that the man's dreams were probably only attainable in the afterlife. Sighing, he finished his ramen and turned to face the man. Well, my earlier answers were the truth, but I also like training and reading too. I dislike the cycle of hatred in the shinobi world, and my dream for the future is still none of your business. Jumping down off of his stool and ignoring the man's sad smile, Naruto started to walk off but froze when he heard Kakashi speak once more. He was my sensei, your father. Naruto smiled. I know, he must have been a pretty lousy teacher if I'm honest. Kakashi was startled. How could Naruto know that? Oh? And what makes you say that? He was surprised to hear a genuine chuckle from the mysterious blonde, because no good sensei would allow their student to be so consistently late and utterly lazy. Watching as the blonde walked off from the stall, Kakashi smiled to himself and looked towards the Hokage monument, thinking of his old team. He would get through to Naruto. The boy was his last real chance. Despite the torrential downpour, he continued on lightly, feeling the power of his determination in every step. It was his 5th lap around the village, and as each drop of heavy rain pelted against his tired body, he felt as though he was being cleansed, not of his sins but of his guilt. He was a murderer, a thief, and a liar, a shinobi. He would not delude himself otherwise, yet as the violent winds swept through the streets around him, as if to test his resolve, he found himself at peace once more with his crimes. Stormy nights were always a time of reflection for Namake's Naruto. A murderer, he whispered to himself, tasting the cold-bloodedness of his past actions in the cool water as it hit his lips. A thief, he grit out, turning a sharp corner and smiling bitterly at seeing a mother comfort her child in a lit window. A liar. He pushed more power into each step, reveling in the aching sensation that continued to spread throughout his body and embracing the cold, harsh wind as it howled out at him, reminding him of his purpose in life. A shinobi. Forcing his body to keep tearing through the wind, his thoughts turned to the two brothers he had lost to the same village he now coursed through. He let out a soft chuckle, picking up the pace once more, as the chilling cold reminded him of the bleak reality he lived in. En route, you have no name. You have no feelings. You have no past. You have no future. There is only the mission. He heard his sensei's voice as a piercing whisper in the wind. Those words would stay with him for as long as he lived and, like the rain, they would continue to assuage his guilt. A sacrifice. He breathed out, hitting another corner and feeling the burn in his heart as though it were responding to the strength of his will. He was snapped out of his reverie as he heard an unfamiliar voice call out his name. Naruto-san. Bringing himself to an abrupt halt, he turned to see Yamanaka Inoichi standing outside his home and smiling at him. So as not to be rude, he gave a small salute and made to continue with his run, but was unprepared for the man to call his name once more and beckon him over. Naruto-san, this is the third time I have seen you come running past here, and I must say I am impressed with your dedication to training. The village is starting to wake up though, and I had hoped you would join me for a light breakfast before you went to meet your team. Though do not feel obliged to please me just because I am a clan head. Just what is this man's game? He's never taken an interest in you before. Naruto nodded politely and followed the man into his home. He didn't know what the Yamanaka clan head was up to, but he wasn't going to miss an opportunity to befriend the former head of interrogation. Danzo-sama had taught him that it was good to keep powerful friends, as you may never know when you might need one to exploit. They had been sitting in the man's office for just over an hour and a half discussing Naruto's early life and other trivial things. It seemed the clan head had heard from the Sandaime that Naruto knew of his true heritage and burden, and the old man wanted all his most trusted shinobi to get closer to the young boy in order to get to know the real him and report back to the Hokage. Naruto was pissed that the Sandaime thought him stupid enough not to see through his plan, but at the same time it meant he would be getting a lot of powerful and influential people seeking him out, which would help him in the long run when he was ready to take the Hokage mantle. So Naruto-san, how are you enjoying being on your genin team? Inoichi had been very impressed with Naruto and glad he had found an opportunity to talk to the boy. The Namikaze air was nothing like he had imagined and was actually rather interesting to listen to. His intelligence and polite attitude had caused the older man to warm up to the young boy fairly quickly. Naruto took another sip of his tea before lifting his gaze to meet the expectant Yamanaka's. He might not have been enjoying himself, but the man did make good tea. Well, I suppose it's not what I expected, but perhaps with time my team will start to look more like a cohesive unit. The reality is that we each have very different and opposing personalities and… He was cut off by the sound of a loud crash from the rear of the house, which caused both males to suddenly jump up from their seats and instantly draw out kunais. Without the need to communicate, they quickly and quietly made their way to the source of the noise. Standing on each side of the back doorway, Inoichi signaled to the younger blonde that he would go out first and Naruto would follow, taking out the intruder from behind if necessary. The boy nodded in understanding, and Inoichi briefly marveled at the professionalism the boy was displaying. There was not a trace of fear in his features, nor was there any childish excitement, just a trained shinobi that was ready to move at the signal. The boy was showing great promise for their line of work. They executed their plan after another second, and as both appeared in the garden, looking at the cause of the disturbance, they simultaneously sweat-dropped before turning to each other and laughing. Several crates of flower pots that had been stacked round the back had cascaded over, creating a huge pile of soft soil and crushed flowers, on the top of which sat the bane of every genin's existence, the cat belonging to the fire daimyo's wife Tora. Shaking their heads and laughing at the sight, both shinobi spun round as a new presence burst through the doorway. Daddy? What was that noise? Is everything all right? Ino didn't notice Naruto as she ran straight towards her father, wrapping herself from the cold with a light blue blanket. The rain had stopped by this point, though her blanket trailed behind her in the mud. Watching as the man comforted his Ino-chan, a thought suddenly hit Naruto, and he decided to make his presence known with a small cough. As touching as this is, I couldn't help but notice that at hearing the signs of a possible intruder in your home, you came out here with a blanket, and please tell me that is not a Sasuke doll? Ino jumped at hearing Naruto's voice. What the hell are you doing at my house, dead last? She screamed at him, trying to hide the doll under her blanket as she pinned Naruto with a disgusted look. I should have known you would be the one causing disturbances at night. Why don't you go back to whatever dirty hole you live in and stop pestering the rest of us? Ino! The older man made to reprimand his daughter but was cut across by his insulted guest. Not even a blunt object, you are supposed to be a kunoichi. And it figures you would immediately accuse me of doing something wrong. If you'll excuse me, I have a dirty hole to get back to. Thank you for the tea, Inoichi-sama. It was easily the best I've ever had. Nodding at the stunned clan head and rolling his eyes as he noticed Ino struggling to cover her frilly nightgown and Sasuke doll with the small dirty blanket whilst trying to maintain her glare, Naruto shoved his hands in his pockets and strolled out the back gate of the Yamanaka compound. Again, Inoichi was shocked by the young Namikaze. He had expected the boy to fire up at his daughter for her rude accusations, but he had behaved maturely and even remembered to thank the clan head for his hospitality before departing. The boy was certainly one to watch. This was it. This was the moment it all rode on. Watching impassively as the Sandaime flicked through the mission requests, he waited to hear what bullshit D rank they were about to be assigned. Right, Team 7, we have quite the selection here for you. Let me see. Helping out with some gardening, babysitting some triplets, grocery shopping, painting a fence. No. 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 We do not want any of those missions, thank you very much. I would like to put forward a request for a C-rank mission, Sandaime-sama. The unpredictable blonde had at this point strode boldly over to the Hokage's desk and was now resting both hands down on it and staring the elderly man straight in the eye. Naruto, we don't give C-rank missions to rookie genin teams. It is simply not the way things are done in Konoha. He was impressed by the fire in the boy's eyes but would not endanger a genin team just because the Namikaze heir was sick of D ranks. I fully understand that, Hokage-sama. However, I believe that in Team 7's case a C-rank would present the perfect opportunity to improve the team dynamic and ultimately strengthen Konoha's military. Is it not true that in the past many undertrained shinobi were sent on high-ranking missions as the elite were stretched thin? I am not suggesting you relieve us of D ranks altogether, just that a C rank every once in a while would serve as motivation to improve as a unit. Hiruzen smiled at his favorite blonde. The boy was putting forward a good case, but it would not be enough. Naruto. You can't speak to the Sandaime like that. His bubblegum-haired teammate hissed from behind him. The Sandaime didn't miss the dark look that passed over Naruto's features at hearing the girl's voice, but he was impressed with how the boy handled the situation. Sakura-chan, he said sweetly, turning to smile brightly at his teammate, which caused a chill to run down her spine as Naruto had not smiled at her once since they were on the same team, or added a-chan to her name for that matter. I am simply informing the Sandaime that we are ready to take on something a bit more challenging. After all, you, Sasuke, and I would have no trouble handling bandits and the like, would we now? The stress he had placed on Sasuke's name seemed to have registered with the girl as she glanced over at the Uchiha, and noted that he didn't seem worried about taking a higher-ranking mission. She didn't say anything out loud though, as she found her voice stuck in her throat at the look Naruto was giving her, opting instead to nod enthusiastically at the Sandaime. The Sandaime quirked an eyebrow at the unexpected response. Turning to look at the team's Jonin-sensei, he decided to put the decision in the man's hands. It was unorthodox, but he was intrigued by this genin team and wanted to hear about Naruto's performance out of the village. Kakashi, what do you think? The younger man was stunned that his Hokage was even considering it, and was about to shut the idea down immediately, that is until he saw the pleading look in Naruto's eyes. It had only been the previous night that he had discussed this exact situation with his sensei's son. Could he really deny the boy this small victory? Sighing to himself, he met eyes with the Sandaime and nodded. I believe Team 7 would perform well at a C-rank mission, Hokage-sama, and would like to support Naruto's request. The old man smiled at seeing the triumphant expression on Naruto's face. It had been too long since he had seen some semblance of happiness in the boy's features. Pausing to enjoy the anticipation that was clear on the boy's face, he eventually addressed the team. Very well, I have a C-rank here that arrived early yesterday evening to escort a bridge builder back to the land of waves. Could the boy's grin get any wider? Sai and Terra raced on ahead of Team 7 on Naruto Taicho's instruction. Their orders were to scout for any enemy presence and eliminate the threat, as they could not risk Team 7 being withdrawn from their mission if the Hataki picked up that there was a higher risk than expected. Terra looked over at Sai and smiled beneath his mask. The other agent had not worked with Naruto Taicho before, and Terra was certain he would have some of his core beliefs shaken over the course of the mission. Usually Danzo-sama would only allow select agents out with Naruto Taicho, as the Namikaze heir somehow always seemed to reverse some of the strict emotional training that the Warhawk had drilled into his ninja. It was for that reason why Naruto Taicho had been given his own squad, to which Terra was a member, who were the only 4 people aside from Kyoko Taicho that were allowed to spend prolonged periods of time with the blonde. So it had been initially surprising to Terra that Sai had been sent on this mission instead of Takeo, Hyo, or Jun, the other 3 members of the blonde's squad. Seeing the confusion in Terra's eyes after he had debriefed and dismissed the two, Naruto had invited Terra to spar with him and had revealed that Sai was Danzo's new apprentice and that it was the old man's way of testing how well Sai has taken to his training. Terra had chuckled at hearing that. There was no way Sai would be able to resist Naruto. There was just something about him that made you feel human again. Terra suddenly stopped behind a bush and signaled for Sai to do the same. Something was wrong. He could sense two foreign chakras nearby but was having trouble using his Shadow Seeker technique, a technique that had the wielder's shadow spread out in long, thin tendrils that were drawn to nearby chakra signals to find the hiding enemy. Focusing harder on the technique as his mind raced trying to figure out why he could sense the chakras but not find them, the answer suddenly hit the Nara boy. The water. It has to be the water. They are using some sort of concealment technique to disguise themselves as a puddle. It is a clever idea considering the rainstorm we just had. They are probably misneen if they are using such a technique. So he knew how they were hiding, he just had to find out where. There were too many puddles to investigate each one individually, and they didn't have too long as Naruto Taicho and his genin team weren't far behind. A plan began to formulate in his mind as he signaled to Sai. They would have to draw the enemy nin out of their hiding place and take them out swiftly. Back in Konoha, the Jonin commander was playing shogi with the Umbu commander and discussing recent events. So I hear Sandame-sama allowed Team 7 to take AC rank mission earlier today. The Nara clan head brought up casually after making his move. I must say I was surprised he would let Naruto out of the village so soon. The Umbu commander, known as Fox Taicho, nodded silently before moving another pawn. Nara Shikaku rarely took an interest in anything that wasn't work, drink, or gambling related, so the commander knew to be careful with his words when the man brought up a different topic. I can't help but think that boy is playing us all. I'm sure you are aware of the recent revelation that he has been hiding his true knowledge all this time? Shikaku leant back in his chair and stared straight into the other man's eyes. The Umbu commander knew something, he was certain of it. Fox paused before nodding again and gesturing for Shikaku to make his move. I must confess I have long suspected the boy of deceit. Did you know he beat me at this game the same day I taught it to him? About 5 years ago? Fox froze in his place. An untrained 7-year-old had beaten the village's head tactician in a war strategy game. It was unbelievable. As were most things concerning Namake's Naruto these days. The boy could disappear for long periods of time without leaving any sign of where he had gone. There were times he did not sleep in his apartment even. He knew many things he should not, and he was incredibly too good at avoiding capture from the village elite. For a boy that had been ostracized from regular society at a young age, he displayed talents that could not possibly be purely natural. Someone had been training the boy, he would not believe otherwise, but each time he took his concerns to the Hokage he was immediately shot down. Did the Hokage know the truth already? No, Shikaku-san, I was not aware that you were in contact with Naruto. Yes, he comes over every few weeks to play shogi with me. I must say he is quite the challenger. Though the more I see him, the less I believe the reports in his file. Fox was surprised that the man had read Naruto's file. He wondered who else had taken an interest in the blonde. Shikaku could see the curiosity in Fox's eyes and let a small smile grace his face. Quite the enigma our Namake's Naruto is. Both were silent as they pondered the same question. Just who is Namake's Naruto really? The blonde in question was quietly enjoying the sunny day as he walked with his team and their client, Tazuna, down the main road leading out of Konoha. He had never actually taken this route out of Konoha before, so it felt good to be able to stroll out without fear of being seen by one of his fellow nin. Glancing over at the client, he frowned slightly. The man was an annoying drunk, and if Naruto wasn't so against ruining his perfect mission record, he probably would have killed the man himself. Just ahead of him he saw Sakura trying to walk as closely as possible to the Uchiha heir, and found himself wondering how the teen would be different if he were not a root shinobi. Feeling Kakashi's eyes on him from behind, his mind was drawn back to the mission at hand. The mission. There is only the mission. A shadow clone had dispelled from the base to inform him that an agent had met with Sai to retrieve 2 prisoners found along his current path, would-be attackers. They wouldn't be the only ones. So how exactly are we going to do this? You can't scratch your butt without that Hataki man knowing about it. He's constantly watching us. I know. I'm hoping once we get to the Land of Waves my team will rest long enough for me to switch out with a shadow clone and deal with Gato. I've done missions like this 1,000 times, so all I really need is a window of attack. I've got Terra and Sai on hand to deal with any other distraction so I can focus on the target and then quickly transfer all assets to Root. It's a one-night job. What could possibly go wrong? I'm sure those words are cursed. So probably everything. The QB wasn't worried for his host. The more that went wrong, then the more excitement there would be. which was something to look forward to if anything. Terra stroked his chin as he retracted his Shadow Seeker technique. There were two enemy nin in a clearing up ahead, and from what his shadow could tell, one of them was a powerful Jonin, and the other had some sort of bloodline limit. This was not good at all. He had Sai create an ink bird for them to scout from the sky. They had to ascertain the threat level quickly so they could report to their captain immediately. Quick, Sai. We don't have time to lose. He tried to think just how he was going to get a message to his captain without alerting the copy nin that something was up. Hi! A large, eagle-like bird made of ink suddenly sprung from Sai's scroll, and they quickly boarded it. Soaring over the clearing, both of their eyes widened as they saw what was undoubtedly Momochi Zabuza leaning against a tree, his famous executioner's blade strapped to his back, conversing with a younger shinobi dressed as a mist hunter nin. No, this isn't good at all, Terra thought to himself as they retreated back towards Naruto Taicho's location. Sakura had decided to take a break from getting close to Sasuke and made the uncharacteristic decision to talk to Naruto for a change. Kakashi raised an eyebrow when he saw the pinkette double back to walk alongside the blonde. Perhaps there is hope for her yet, he mused quietly before turning his attention back to his book. What the hell does she want? Beats me. Naruto was not annoyed that Sakura was walking with him. It seemed she had remembered there were 4 people on the team, which was good progress for her. Can I help you, Sakura? His tone was mild and held no hint of malice to it, so Sakura simply shrugged. I just wanted to ask how you were. She wasn't entirely sure why she had gone to talk with the blonde, she just felt as though she should. Naruto hadn't been anything like she had imagined he would be, and a part of her felt she had judged him wrongly, only a small part though. I'm alright, thanks. It feels good to be away from the village, seeing the world and all that. How are you? He wasn't particularly interested, but she was his teammate, and he wasn't about to discourage friendly behavior. A bit scared. Who knows what we might face out here, but I guess we'll be alright if we work together. She was looking nervously at the ground, and it reminded Naruto how different he was from these children. He was the same age as them but had been forced to mature and cast aside his fears many years ago. The innocence in his teammates' eyes only strengthened his determination to one day become the Hokage. They shouldn't just hand out weapons and shinobi titles to kids when they simply weren't ready for this life. He made a silent vow to have that practice changed one day. Before he could respond to the girl, the sound of a flare gun shooting up into the sky caused him to turn sharply. The whole team froze to watch as there was a small explosion of color in the sky. Yellow. If that's Sai or Terra, the next one should be red. A moment later and another flare went off, this time shooting out red. Yellow followed by red was a call code for Naruto. The next flare would be white, and the one after would be the main message. Black for high-level warning, red for mid-level warning, and blue for low-level warning. The flare after would be the suggestion: white for retreat, green for engage, and yellow for change route. The full code read, Naruto Taicho. High-level threat up ahead, you should change route if possible. Don't change route. The excitement is in this direction. Kurama had a great feeling about whatever was up ahead, and the last thing he wanted Naruto to do was go elsewhere. I have to try and change route. I can't engage a high-level threat with Kakashi around to bear witness, not to mention I have 3 vulnerabilities with me. If we continue on, then Kakashi will have to fight alone, and I miss out on an exciting fight anyway. I've got to get him to change route. TCH. So they die? So what? We'll be happier and less burdened without them. I can't engage anyone till I get away from them. He decided to ignore Kurama's huffing and address his phony sensei. Kakashi-sensei. What do you think that was? Some sort of coded message, though I don't know who it is from or for. Kakashi was deliberating whether or not they should try and find an alternative route. The flares had come from the general direction they were heading in, and he didn't want to endanger his team. We should go a different way. There might be high-ranking nin that way. Naruto didn't miss the way Sasuke perked up at hearing him say that. Of course he wants to go running towards danger to prove himself, or whatever it is he thinks that will do. Damn it, he better not speak up. Don't be a baby, Naruto. Sensei, we should continue on. Changing routes would delay us too much and put the client at more risk. Naruto only groaned as he heard Sakura go from nervous to enthusiastic in a split second at hearing the Uchiha speak. Yeah. Sasuke-kun is right, we should carry on. For once they actually have the right idea. He was glad Naruto was being outvoted and could see the Hatake looking more convinced. This was perfect. Very well. We will continue on this path, but stay vigilant. The Hatake man had a bad feeling about things, and judging by how much the client was shaking, he sensed they were missing something. Though what had surprised him most was Naruto. The boy immediately wanted to take a different path, uncharacteristic considering he was the one who mostly spoke about doing more challenging missions. It was as if the boy knew exactly what the signal meant. As if it were meant for him. Narrowing his eyes at the boy and not missing the brief side glance he received in return, he slipped his book away and gave their surroundings his full attention as they continued on. Sliding the door shut behind him, the Sandaime considered the man sat waiting for him in the small tea room. Shimura Danzo, often referred to as the Shinobi of Darkness. The two had been friends in a Konoha very different to the Konoha of today, in a time where everything was done for the greater good of the village, no matter the cost. Chuckling softly as he sat down, he considered that perhaps it hadn't changed that much, they just weren't as open about their methods. Hokage-sama, I must say I was surprised you wanted to meet for tea today, and without Koharu and Hamura, most strange. Hiruzen smiled as he poured himself a small cup of tea. Do you remember what I said to you shortly after Minato's death? Concerning his son? I believe you forbade me from inducting the heir into the foundation. May I ask the relevance of such a question? Is Naruto a member of the foundation? The blunt question was accompanied with a hard stare, befitting of the god of shinobi. It would not be enough for Danzo to reveal the truth though. No, but I still maintain that he should be and would gladly begin inducting him if you so desired, Hiruzen. The Sandaime had not yet blinked, and the Root Commander took a moment to sip at his tea, not once flinching under his old comrade's gaze. I fear that Naruto is keeping secrets from me and has been training with someone without my authorization. This could be a potential threat, and my men are making little to no headway with tracking him. I require you to place a tag on him. It was all Danzo could do not to laugh. Hiruzen was asking him to spy on his own shinobi. This was perfect, as it would get some of the Sandaime's men off the boy and give him more freedom to move about. As you wish, I will assign my best to watch him for a time and report back to you. The Sandaime nodded before leaving his tea unfinished and making for the door. He paused when he reached it, and the temperature in the room plummeted as he turned around and fixed Danzo with a powerful killing intent. I have not forgotten your past betrayals, Danzo, so do not fail me here. You won't like the consequences. The old man nodded once more before leaving the war hawk alone in the room to ponder. Things really are changing around here, he murmured to himself before sipping his tea again. Laying out the map on the ground, Naruto took out a red marker and circled a specific spot. He was quiet deep in the woods near Tizuna's village and had Terra and Sai knelt opposite him, also inspecting the map. After the flare warning, things had taken a turn for the worst, and Kakashi was currently out cold in the old drunk's house after fighting the demon of the bloody mist, Momochi Zabuza. Naruto had initially been impressed with Hatake Kakashi's battle skill and had developed just a bit more respect for the man watching the fight. That is, until the man idiotically got himself trapped in a water prison and Naruto had to quickly plan and execute a diversion plan with Sasuke to break the man free. It's a damn good thing I mastered the perfect henge, or that shuriken trick would have failed miserably. It's a damn shame you didn't just fight the swordsman. How dare he call himself a demon? I am a demon. He is a puny mortal. Naruto rolled his eyes. Anyway, after that the fight was as good as over when the disguised accomplice showed up and took a battered Zabuza away. Naruto was certain they would return, but as far as he was concerned the mission was over. Tizuna was in his house without a scratch. Job done. If anything, Zabuza had done him a favor, because with his Hatake stalker recovering in bed he was free to move forward with his other mission without interference. Which was what brought him to the present moment. He and his root team were planning how to get into the Gato-S base and bop him off. The issue was that Gato-S base was a fortress on a small isolated island a little way out. Naruto did not have time to go all the way there, as his team would be departing just as soon as Kakashi was up and running. He had to stall for time somehow. He couldn't send Terra and Sai, as Sai was mostly trained for infiltration and was still not a full field agent yet, and Terra was more suited to reconnaissance. Naruto was the assassin on the team, and so he had to get some more time to do his part. Kakashi would be up within a day. What could he possibly say to get the man to stay longer? Maybe he could convince his team to stay under the guise of helping Tizuna finish the bridge? That is a fantastic idea, as you will then get another chance to fight that charlatan. Demon of the Mist? We'll show him demon. Nope, there won't be any need for that, because when I kill Gato, Zabuza won't have an employer and so can stay out my way. You're not planning on fighting any ninja at all, are you? The QB grumbled in the boy's mindscape. Of course I'm not. I am here to complete the mission. There is only the mission. Relax, you'll get your blood and gore when I get to the island. Yes, but it would be a lot better if your victims could put up a fight. Oh well. That was not the way his sensei had trained him. She had always said that it was foolish to go looking for trouble when his line of work already put enough of it on his path. He would get more missions where he had to fight ninja. This was not one of those. Focusing his attention back on the map, he pointed to the circle he had just drawn. Right, that is Gato's base. I will visit it only once to kill Gato. What I need you two to do is scope the place out and find me the best entrance and exit and the best time to do so. Sai, you are supposed to be good at getting in places and staying out of sight, and Terra, you are good at finding things out and making things work. So between the two of you, this should be a piece of cake. Understood? He received 2 responses of "Hi, sir," accompanied by sharp nods. Good. Next, once I take out Gato and slip past the guards closest to him, I won't be able to hang around and transfer assets. However, I will leave several shadow clones to complete that part of the mission on my behalf, but they will need guarding. You do not have clearance to transfer the assets yourself, as that would require knowledge of sensitive route information, so for that part you will keep watch for enemy presence while my clones do the rest. Understood? Hi, sir, they chorused. Now I know it looks like I'm not doing much, but I also have to stay with my Genin team in case Sabuza shows up, plus I can't risk Hataki Kakashi noticing my absence. So I need a small window to get in and out of the base without anyone being able to trace the murder back to me. You've got 24 hours to report back to me with your findings. We meet here at this time tomorrow. Dismissed. Naruto handed Terra the map and watched as the two vanished from sight. Sighing to himself, he turned and strolled lightly back to the small village whilst whistling a small tune. Some time later he felt a nearby presence and hid behind a tree. As he ducked down and cautiously looked out, he saw what looked like a teenage girl picking medicinal herbs just a little way away. Wait, no. I know that chakra signature. That was no girl, despite what the person was wearing. It's that beguiler's accomplice. Surely you can kill him? Nope, wouldn't want to draw unnecessary attention. Too risky. You haven't killed a single thing since we left the village. What has gotten into you? This was not what the Great Fox had in mind for when Naruto finally got a proper mission. For Kami's sake, I can't act freely when I'm out with Team 7. I won't risk displaying more ability than necessary and getting caught out. He once again chose to ignore the Biju's ranting and decided to make his presence known to the slightly older boy. I see you're picking herbs. For your master's recovery, I assume? The other boy jumped slightly and spun round at hearing the calm voice. I'm sorry, Shinobi-san, but I don't believe we've met before. I suppose we didn't exactly meet, but I know you are an accomplice to Momochi Zabuza. Relax, I have no intention of fighting you here. He had seen the other boy reaching for something in his basket, most likely a weapon. We are enemies. Why would you not attack me? Gone was the friendly tone of voice as they stared impassively at each other from opposite sides of the field. No. We were enemies yesterday and perhaps we will be enemies tomorrow. I don't see the need to fight today, do you? The effeminate boy was stunned by the blonde's calm demeanor. He was being neither friendly nor hostile, he was just making simple conversation. Who are you? He breathed out,